And boom, we're live. And for the second time in 2016, here we are. And well, good evening to one and all. And well, good evening, David. We've been kind of having a bit of a pre-podcast kind of play around with the tools. But how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing good. Doing good. It's a new year. A lot of optimism. So, got fingers crossed.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying, and I think I think it's something that Brady mentioned at the end of the last dance meeting. And he was saying, when you get to the point where we are knowing what we do, maybe in our own ways about the safe network and stuff, it kind of charges you up as a human being, and you end up waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sparked with these ideas about how this solution and how this can be solved. And I don't know, it's just me, but like you say, and I think for the first time, I've looked ahead of this year and thinking, wow, this is really starting to spark everything inside me, and thinking this is really going to happen this year.
Yes, for sure. And there's not just the safe network, but globally, there's a lot of stuff happening right now, and it just seems like we're culminating to a really big event.
Exactly, and this is one of the things that I why I think this is going to be convergence this year, because like you said, it's not just with this with MadeSafe or other platforms and stuff, and it's not even just with technology. It's just generally we're just. I think you mentioned it when you were on John's podcast, and I think it's right. We're entering a
Paradigm.
paradigm shift, and we're about to move up a level and then like move ourselves up as a species. That's what I truly think we are at right now.
Yeah, there's so many things happening, and it's all going on simultaneously. It's actually hard to keep track of, but the kind of person that I am, I keep track of everything, and I stay informed as best I can on just about everything I can get my hands and my eyes and everything. Just the knowledge and keeping track and keeping up is it's work. It can be exhausting at times.
Well, yeah, my friend. I think basically it's an impossible task. It's like trying to, swim out into the ocean and take a bucket back and say, I've captured the ocean. I mean, the amount of technology and just new innovations that are rising. I mean, no, it's almost impossible for any human being to keep hold of what's going on, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And this is generally what we're starting to see. And I love your analogy of it. The AI of the new baby is being born, and that eventually is going to be far smarter than we can ever imagine.
Yeah, that's definitely exciting news, and hopefully we can not have too much growing pains. I mean, that's just part of growing up. That's how it goes.
Exactly. Before we get off into massive tangents about AI, the future, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, like I said to you before we went live. I mean, one of the things that I really wanted to sort of like drill down on and really kind of focus on tonight, particularly, was something a question I'm asked a lot about, which is farming and you know Hey, really, just generally, I mean, the word farming, most people, listening in the outside world will associate with tractors and combine harvesters and stuff. But the farming we're talking about is the farming of using your, any kind of anything that really connects to the internet to sort of, used as a method of gaining resources. So I think really, again, while you're here, and I know particularly, I don't know how much you want to mention up and talk about it, but you kind of have the Safe Farmers Club, so I know it's something you've got a real big passion and a lot of understanding about. So let's take it right back to the basics. I mean, what is farming?
Okay. Um, well, let's start off with very simple analogies, and I don't like to get into too much technical detail because first off, the network's not live, so everything we're going to be talking about is theory and based on our current knowledge. And as you know, in development, it's a very dynamic situation. Things could change very quickly. And especially if the made safe, the developers decide, oh, the algorithm's not working quite right. So that would change everything. So just wanted to qualify that and say, this is all theory. And so don't go on writing down everything I say and saying this is the way David said it's going to be, and this is what I'm going to go invest $1,000 on setting up a farming rig because of what he said. And I'm just saying, full disclaimer, this is not advice. We're just talking about the theory. Okay, so basically, when you're farming in the safe network, you're basically providing resources. And that resources is classified as your bandwidth, your storage space on your computer, and your processing power, because you're going to be running the client or the vault. So if I were to describe it, when you're running the API, which is called a non-client node, that's a vault. And the vault is basically, I guess you could say it's like your tractor, your hardware. So it's your tractor, and your storage space on your computer is your farmland. So the bigger storage space you have, the bigger farm you have to farm. So you got your little tractor farming. Now, the interesting thing about farming is we have what's called a chicken egg problem, which comes first. And right now they've been discussing some ideas about how to go about it. Because in order for you to farm, you need data. Now, you cannot give yourself data, just like a farmer cannot just arbitrarily give himself customers. He has to wait for the customers to come and say, hey, I need this kind of crop, or I need that kind of crop. So the demand comes from the users. The problem is the Safe Network by default is designed to take SafeCoin first, and then the user can upload data onto the network. So let's say you want to store a file, well, video file, for example, and the Safe Network say, okay, well, this amount of space on the Safe Network will cost this amount of SafeCoin. So the user pays the SafeCoin, and that SafeCoin goes into the pool, and then the farmer gets a piece of that, because it gets distributed all over the network. It's not like one farmer just gets the whole file. The file gets broken up into little pieces and scattered everywhere. That's how we preserve the anonymity, the redundancy. Yeah. Just ask me to clarify anything if I'm going into too much technical stuff. It's just the way my mind works. Okay, so now all the chunks are spread out amongst the network. So all these individual farmers have their tractors running. This is the vault. The vault processes the data chunk, and it keeps it, safekeeping, and it stays online, connected to the network, and it's always ready, 24/7, whenever the network decides it needs that chunk. So that's the whole part about the farming. Now, a lot of people have the misconception that, oh, as soon as I get something, I get paid. Oh, I received a chunk from somewhere. And that's not true. It's when the chunk is requested. So that same person that uploaded their video file, let's say a couple days later, they want to look at the video file again. So they call it, or they request it. So when they request it, then the request spreads out throughout the network, and the network starts retrieving all those chunks that was broken up into the video file. And so you as a farmer, your tractor's like, oh, time to go to work. So your tractor gets that file, that chunk, and then submits it to, the appropriate routing channels. And it finally arrives at the client node, and the guy gets all his chunks and assembles it and puts the video file together and is happy. So at that point, it's because of redundancy, we have what's called, there's 4 farmers always in competition for each chunk. So the 4 farmers for that one chunk, and the fastest farmer of the 4 is the one that gets what they call an attempt to earn SafeCoin. They refer to it as a lottery because it's a random attempt. It's not guaranteed. And we can go off into a whole subject matter about that one, but we'll just kind of glaze over that one. So let's say the fastest farmer, let's say that was your tractor. You had the fastest tractor. It sent the chunk the fastest. And so it got there, and then you got your lottery attempt, and you won SafeCoin. You did your random attempt, and now you got your SafeCoin. So now that's how you got your SafeCoin. Okay, so everything sounds good, right? The one question is, well, how did the person get SafeCoin in order to upload the file in the first place? Aha. That is a problem, because pretty much everybody that are new to the Safe Network that weren't part of the crowd cell do not have SafeCoin. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they don't have SafeCoin, how could they put data onto the network, right? So the only ones that can put data onto the network are the people that were in the crowd cell that got SafeCoin initially. And that means there's 430 million SafeCoin currently in existence, and those people are the ones. Now they could sell their safe coin on the exchanges. They can trade it, give it away, or do whatever they want, and distribute it in so many different ways. So that is a clever way that MateSafe resolved the chicken egg problem. But we're still facing that question. Well, if people weren't part of the crowd sale and they're not familiar or associated with any of the people that have SafeCoin, and they just heard about the same network and they want to try it out, and they were like, I want to try and put something on there. Well, I can't. I have to get SafeCoin. Well, I don't know if I want to go through an exchange. I mean, I don't know anybody who's ever tried getting Bitcoin from exchanges know how many loops they have to jump through. It's a serious pain. And so Dave Irvine and the MateSafe are suggesting that we allow people to upload for free during our testing phase, so that will get data onto the network. And it'll also give people an opportunity to test out the network without any risk. You don't want to spend your safe coin and have your data lost, or you don't want to just lose your safe coin for something that, for whatever reason, it just opens the barrier, or it lowers the barrier to entry. So I thought it was a good idea. And so a lot of people thought, they had questions about, well, how much should we allow it to be free? Can someone just kill the network? If you just allow them to upload an infinite amount, can they kill the network in the beginning and whatnot? So there's all these different topics that we're discussing. So I'm going to pause there, and any questions you got for me so far?
No, I mean that's a very concise. I mean, as usual, David, you hit the nail right on the head. Really, I mean, some of the again, it sparks a lot of opportunities, and you think a lot of things again where people can step in. So I mean, again, I mix with a lot of people and a lot of creators and stuff, and creators tend to be the people who are very open to being early adopters or the very early innovators and stuff like that. And this is what I'm trying to say. I try to say to many people right now that there's some really big opportunities right now to get on board and shape this. And from what you're just saying there, so you were mentioning about how the first people on are going to be able to give them this free chance to upload and stuff like that. So what? As you know, we're building. There's many apps out there, but there's this. What opportunities do you think with someone who maybe hasn't got a lot of coding skills, and maybe they're just a creator of some sort? Maybe they make a film or a book, or whatever they're producing. What would your advice to them be right now, where they're thinking, okay, like you say, I haven't got any safe coin. What would be the process of like you said, and thinking, I quite like the idea of the first uploads are going to be for free and stuff like that. What would be your advice to these people?
My advice to people that weren't part of the crowd sale, that don't have an easy way to get their hands on SafeCoin, would be to start farming. That would be the simplest way. It's as easy as downloading an app, like you download apps onto your smartphone, and just run it.
Mm-hmm.
Run the app. The curious thing is, how efficient will the hardware that you're using work? What is it? Will it be more expensive to run than the SafeCoin you receive? There's a whole slew of operations. I have some ideas as to how to bootstrap the economy, but currently it's not really being considered. And I wrote a post about how to do it. So we're gonna hopefully, during this test phase, we'll find out if it is, because the biggest question here is how much storage is going to be available. If you open up the doors and you allow people to upload whatever the amount they want, at some point it'll either be more than enough storage or it'll fill up.
Mm-hmm.
And the Safe Network will have to start charging SafeCoin. Now, that's a decision that is going to be determined during the testing phase, I suppose. So we're kind of going off into what the developers are, what are they thinking? And it's anybody's guess as to what's going to happen.
Well,
But
go on.
But for, just for a user, from a user's perspective, I would say, just get into farming. And by that I mean, just you, once we open the network to public access, and everyone can just download, that's all it is you just download the application and you run your tractor, your vault. That's what I was referring to earlier. You just have it run on your computer, just like, I think it's just like a Bitcoin miner. Yeah, it's very similar to like running your Bitcoin miner, where it does the hashing and it does the work in the background. So there's nothing else you really need to do. Your computer's doing all of that. So like, just like running a Bitcoin miner, you would just run a farming node or a vault.
Yep.
And I will create a video on how to do that, once I figure out, how to make it the easiest way to do it. As I've done like how to install a vault. I've done a video on that one as well. So that's part of what I'm going to do. And I formed the Safe Farmers Club in order to explore the different avenues of farming. Specifically, should we farm at home on our computers? Can we farm on our phone? Can you farm in the cloud? Should I just get a dedicated business line that has a high upload bandwidth? There's a lot of questions that we have, and there's a lot of theories to each one. So I'm of the mind that it's whatever works. And here's the basis. If you want to do professional farming, you want to get the most bang for your buck, the name of the game is, the goal is to run the most vaults, the most number of vaults for the longest period of time. That's it. That's how you're going to get the most safe coin. The more vaults you can run successfully that can stay connected for the longest amount of time, that's how you will earn the most amount of safe coin. How you do it and what kind of hardware you need to get it, that's all up in the air, and it's a question. So that's why we're going to explore it. And then just like how in Bitcoin mining, they evolved, the miners evolved from going from regular computers, then the game got harder, and then they started going to high-end graphics cards. And then the game got even harder than that, and then they finally specialized into ASIC, specialized ASIC chips. Now there's this whole warehouses full of ASIC chips, all plugged in, all mining away, hashing. Hopefully we don't become that centralized or that specialized. And my biggest fear is that we might head down that road if things become, if they're in too much in favor of the powerhouse hardware, the powerhouse farmers. We don't know. And hopefully, because I'm just going to describe something that's very different between Bitcoin mining and SafeCoin farming. In Bitcoin mining, when you're running a miner, your miner challenges all other miners, unless you're in a pool. And in that case, if that pool challenges everybody else. So the one with the biggest hashing power, is the most likely to find the solution and then get the Bitcoin. Well, with SafeCoin farming, you're not challenging the entire network. You're just challenging 3 other vaults, 3 other farmers. And that is incredible. That's like very granular, and it distributes the payout a lot better. So you don't have to worry about beating the entire network. You just have to worry about beating your 3 other competitors. That's it. And that's for each chunk. So unlike Bitcoin, like there's a race every 5 minutes, or is it 10 minutes? I think it's 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes there's a race, and then the winner gets the payout. They get the 50 Bitcoins or 25 Bitcoins. So with SafeCoin, there's a race for every chunk. So there's a lot of little races going on just between 4 farmers. So it's very, very distributed. It's spread out everywhere. So some people say, well, why am I competing against 3 other farmers or 3 other vaults? Well, redundancy. We keep the same chunk in 4 vaults total. That's why. So let's say your vault goes out of commission, you get disconnected, that chunk is lost, but we still have 3 other copies. So that's one of the reasons why it was done that way. Some people say, well, why not 5 vaults? Why not 2 vaults? Well, that's just the number they came up with. They found that 4 vaults was the most distributed had the highest probability with the least amount of workload, and the most efficient to make sure that data is not lost, to make sure that it is also distributed and not compiled by just one person. So that's the way it ended up when they were doing their testing, and they've been working through this for a very long time.
Well, I mean, I remember when I first kind of came across MadeSafe, and I read all about farming and stuff, and it was almost like a light bulb moment in my head because I thought instantly, okay, well, I've always had a concept of, roughly. I'm not going to go off and speak about that a lot tonight, but the sort of concept behind N99. The minute I heard about farming, I thought, well, that's a really, if we can build an app that encourages the everyday person, just to go to the app and they can become a farmer. Therefore, they're in that, like you said, that race of the tractor. So therefore, they can get SafeCoin, and then the more farmers you get, and the more distributed it gets, and then it's just, that's the perfect way that it reflects nature. Is then there can be never one dominant big farmer, which is like you were saying with Bitcoin, because the point with all, and I always try to always think about everything on this level, that every time I talk about, when people go on about smartphones or they talk about Bitcoin or anything like that, and it always look down the chain and see what level of the chain does it involve a human being. And now you're seeing in China where there's these human beings just working in, like you said, these factories where they're all just, and you think, did it have to come to this? Is it, we're seeing centralization happening in process, and the way to beat centralization like nature does is to spread and make as many people like an ant does. So not just there's one ant that's the farmer, we make any ant at any point the farmer. And the way you do that is that's why I saw it as, was like, okay, we need to get people using the network in any way possible. And if you can integrate that with people uploading content and sharing content and adding to the commonwealth of the greater knowledge, and that makes them more seeds and more. It's just a self, as you said, your analogy is perfect. It's like, there we are, we have this little baby, so what do you need to do? We need to start to feed it, and the more people we can have around it, and the more guidance we can give, the more chance we've got of making that entity get through. Like you said, it's going to stumble, it's going to fall, but if we just leave it alone, and it will probably survive, but it's going to come back and bite us. And I think the way we can take not ownership of it, is understand that we're all part of this, and that's why I've always tried to say that if we can get people using it, then they will almost automatically will become farmers, even if they don't understand it, just by using the network.
Yes. One of the biggest disappointments that I had is when I finally made the decision to jump into Bitcoin, and I realized that the hashing rate was so high, there was just no point in running my average computer to try and mine Bitcoin. I mean, some people do, and they wait months. That was several years ago, and they waited months to finally hit their jackpot and say, yeah, I got a Bitcoin. And then others decided, I just have to join a farming pool. And so they settled for getting a guaranteed, well, not really guaranteed payout, but a very, very small payout, but it's more consistent. It happens more frequently than just waiting months at a time to finally hit their jackpot. And the thing that really disappointed me was the barrier raised. It was very, very low when you first started mining Bitcoin in 2009, 2010. But I think after it got a lot of attention and people started really racking up their hardware, and the hashing difficulty kept going higher and higher, the barrier raised for everybody else that didn't, that wasn't specializing, that wasn't investing $1,000 into their farming rig. And when that barrier raised, to me, philosophically, it excluded me, and I think it excluded a lot of other people. And here's my question. If you want people to accept Bitcoin, don't they need to have Bitcoin to spend?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right? So let's say you're a business, but not everyone can get their hands on Bitcoin unless they sacrifice going through an exchange. And, the Mt. Gox disaster just scared a lot of people away from exchanges. And I'm not saying that all exchanges are bad. In fact, I'm I signed up with an exchange because I had to get Bitcoin so I could buy MaySafe coin. So my question is, you know, I'm thinking about it and I was like, well, I really, really, really hope that SafeCoin, even 10 years from now, 20 years from now, will still be accessible, that people can still contribute whatever hardware resources, no matter how small or how little, and still be able to access SafeCoin that way. Otherwise, we're going to end up where all the major farmers, you know, the big farmers, are going to just farm all the SafeCoin, and they're going to say, well, you have to buy it from me now. And people have to go through exchanges. And to me, that just makes it more difficult for adoption. One of
Yeah.
the things that Dogecoin was real popular is because it got distributed so well, because it was so easy to farm Dogecoin. Because I think at one point they didn't have a limit, they didn't have a cap. So I just kept paying out, kept paying out, kept paying out until they finally said, oh, we want to put a cap on Dogecoin. But guess what? By that time, the distribution had reached so many people that they were able to raise money for charities. They were, because people had it. They had Dogecoin. You know, I'll give you another example. One of the top 5, Ripple. I'm not a fan of Ripple, but guess what? Ripple gave out millions and millions of XRPs. I got 1,000 XRPs just for submitting my email on their blog post saying, you know, that's how they distribute it. So the point I'm trying to get at is, if you want people to spend something, they need something to be able to spend with. So I'm really hoping that the Safe Network and SafeCoin will be distributed, even will continue to be distributed even 10 years from now. And that's, we don't know what's really going to happen. I mean, my worst fear is that SafeCoin could be farmed out within 2 years. Like, all the farmers would just take all the safe coins, and then there's going to be very little safe coin left in the safe coin pool from the network to pay out. That means that everybody that's farming, you know, every time they try and hit that attempt, there's just no safe coin in the pool. The well ran dry, so to speak. So I wrote a post about circulation, and so I'm just, for everyone's knowledge, I'm going off on a tangent here. So circulation in an economy is very vital. If you have ever played an MMO game, the one thing that this is a rule set that they always try to abide by. Whenever you introduce like gold or platinum or silver or whatever currency into the game, they find ways to take it out of the game. And the reason being is because if you have an infinite generation, then what you end up having is just continuously rising prices. A lot of people refer to that as inflation. So they have these creative ways, you know, these fees. You have to fix your armor, you have to pay maintenance fee, you have to pay rent on your house or your room or whatever. They find all these ways for the network or the game to take money out of circulation. So that way it continues to come in, and it goes out, and prices remain stable, right? Well, for me, it's not an issue of generation or an issue of removing currency. It's an issue of circulation. If currency circulates, then an equilibrium will be found, but it has to circulate. And one of the biggest problems in an economy, in any economy, is when circulation stops. You know, we can equate this to the body, the human body. When you have high blood pressure, what's usually happening, the most common cause is your blood is getting stopped at a certain part in your body. It's like from a clot. And that's where it's not getting to like your leg or your arm. And so what does your heart do? It pumps harder. Oh, what does the Fed do? They pump harder. They pump more money. They keep trying to get money into the circulation. But see, you need to address the blood clot to free up the circulation. That's the problem. You know, just like the body, if it can't free up the clot, then guess what? You're probably going to die of a heart attack, you know, or they call hypertension, high blood pressure. So just like the body and just like an economy, you know, to me, it's very important circulation. And I think the Safe Network has done as best as we can so far with circulation theory. And the way they do that is just like the MMO game analogy I was referring to. The network takes money from the farmers and from the users, by charging them to put data onto the network. And that's how it refills the pool. And then the farmers refarm the pool, and then the safe coin goes back around. So hopefully that works out well. We're going to find out how well. If we have more payout than we have income, then that's what I call the blood clot. We need to make sure that the safe network pulls in enough income to refill the well every time it gets drained. And then you have a working system.
Well, I thought it was fascinating, David. That you mentioned then, like you said, maybe in 10 years' time, will the safe coin still have value and stuff like this? And you're quite right. I mean, we're sitting here, and I think it's really healthy and really, really part of the essential point of where we are as human beings to ask these questions. But the way I don't know, maybe my mind just keeps creeping back to the same point every time, thinking, for any solutions or problems that may arise that we may sit here and think of, well, surely this new intelligence that we're seeing witness of, it will find ways around it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like water. I mean, you can have a rock there. It'll just circumnavigate and find a way to get around it. And I almost sort of think, is it our ego as human beings that we actually think we can stop this tide of decentralization of in any way, in any shape or any form, just because we're human beings? I just think it's, as you said before, it's a shift in paradigm. And I think one of the shifts in paradigm is understanding that we're not actually now, there's another intelligence that's rising, and we are no longer the I don't know. We're no longer in that sense at the top of the tree, because I always equate this to that. Great. I mean, in this world, how many coders are there? How many people in scientists? And all it would take would be one meteorite to wipe all those people out. I mean, then it's just people like, and I count myself, sort of pretty clued up on stuff. But I look at my laptop and think, I don't have a clue how that works. If I had to make it again, and that's the whole thing about. I think that right now that I think it's a good thing, and you said it's that shifting paradigm is we're understanding that we're switching. There's something that anybody can tap into, which makes us all very, that analogy. We are all brains of the central nervous system, but equally, it's, I think any problems that we might have right now will be maybe looking back and going back 100 years ago, and someone saying, oh, but no car can go beyond 70 miles an hour because of the human beings, their skin will fall off, and it's never going to actually happen, and technology just comes around as this that makes these things easier. And I just think that's just going to happen regardless of Maisie. If this is a bigger thing, I just think this is an inevitable ocean that's just coming from many. We're just like we are just at the edge of the beach and just watching this huge wave all around us, just about to sweep over us and change us all.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one phrase that always comes to mind is sink or swim.
Mm.
I mean, it's basically, that's what it comes down to. We either adapt and solve the problem, or we fail. And I know that a lot of people, they believe so strongly in whatever ideology that they're in favor of, they're supporting, and their politician or whatnot. And I would say I've always been neutral about it, and I just say, well, I go with whatever works. And the truth is, I'm not smart enough to know what it is, but I am humble enough to decide once I see it working, then I will go with it.
Mm.
So, I like to always say that, I always hope there's somebody smarter than me that comes and solves these things.
Exactly.
because I do my best, but like I said, I'm not the smartest guy around, and I don't have all the answers. But I do admit, if something doesn't work, then you have to just say, well, it doesn't work. And if something is working, and even though it's not working the way you expected, or not working for the purpose that you wanted it, I'll give an example. The flathead screwdriver, they call it the flathead.
Mm-hmm.
The flathead is commonly used to open paint cans. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what it was for. But guess what? It works. It absolutely works, and they
Hmm.
use it for that. It opens the paint cans. So
But David,
I mean, go figure.
David is exactly the same. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Biro pens were the perfect thing to rewind cassettes. You know, you used to have,
Exactly, exactly.
so
Yeah,
like you say,
it works.
but isn't that the very essence of? I mean, this breaks down to what I. This is one of the things that why I really fly the flag for Safe Network, because I think this breaks down to, this is a very good point to linger on, that this is all parts of us being innovative and using tools and exploring things around us, which is what the Safe Network and that whole idea of distribution and sharing of knowledge and resources and stuff is going to open up to. And that's what excites me, and that's what I'm saying, because there's many tools we can start to use, and I think maybe this is why I think I'm so much in synchronicity with what you said, and about how we are in that paradigm shift, because the first step of that paradigm shift is understanding, wow, you are the brains of the central nervous system. You've got the greatest computer inside you. And now we're starting to have the ability to use tools around us, and the exponential rise of technology and the information that's at our hands. And this is why I say often again, these are the greatest days to live in. And for people, for people now to get anything other than really excited about life, you say to them, well, maybe you need to just spend, switch your TV off and just look around you and see what's going on around you, because it's that's, as you just said them quite rightly, that's the process of being, of us as a consciousness. We like to innovate, and we like to use tools for different processes, and we explore, and that's essential to, that's what is essentially this is what this whole existence of us on this planet's about, is to innovate and explore, and to use tools like Safe Network when they come along, and not just hide away from them, but to jump into that void. You know what I mean? Instead of being afraid of the ocean, jump in, swim. You know what I mean? What's the worst that's going to happen? What are you going to do? Spend your rest of the life just standing at the beach and not wanting to go in? I mean, you would know that, my friend. I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
imagine the whole world lived in Guam, and that was their existence, and they never went in the beach. You'd be like, well, you never went in the sea. You'd be like, well, surely your life has been just that, surely not as good experience as a person who's jumped in the ocean and gone, body surfing.
that actually reminds me of a childhood memory, what you're referring to, because I had just finished watching the movie Jaws with the shark,
Hmm.
and and I was terrified to go in the ocean. And guess what? I'm on an island, and we're surrounded by water. And I'm just thinking that there's a shark out there just waiting for me. And I was terrified. It was so much fear in me that was just built up from that movie. And it was a great movie. I mean, they did it really well. But it wasn't until my father forced me to go into the water and swim around and actually see what's what. In other words, you find out what's really there. So we build up. We have a tendency to build up what the unknown is. We fill it up with, oh, that's what's out there, but without actually finding out. And I think the Save Network is going to give us an ocean of opportunities. But at the same time, there's all of these fears of what could happen, how people will abuse it, what people would use it for, and all these things that could go wrong. But like you just said, all we have to do is just go out there and find out. That's the most we can do. It's not good or bad. It's just we're going to go find out what kind of opportunities the Safe Network will bring to the world. And I'm one of those people that I'm no longer going to be subject to my fears that I built up in my head. I'm going to go find out. And then when I find out, then that's when I will tell other people what's what. This is what I found out. This is what I explored. Take it however you will. And I always like to approach it that way. I really hate sounding like a sales guy and telling somebody, "Oh, this is going to make your coffee. This is going to arrange your whole internet life and do all these wonderful things, and it's going to find your perfect mate and bring massive wealth to you." I'm like, "No. You go find out what it is to you. I found out what it is to me." And that's the way it is, because everyone's perception of the same experience, even though it's the same experience, is still a different point of view. So sorry to get all deep and philosophical, but
No,
that's,
no,
yeah,
my
that's
friend.
how it goes.
No, I think this is a very much a truth. You know, and it's always been the case. And I love the analogy of you know, that's what we talk about. You know, someone like Guam or something. If there was 10 of us on a beach, we'd have no problems. We would deal with each other. We would be fine. You know what I mean? I mean, and then you start scaling it up, and it's some point along that scaling up number that something goes wrong, or people want to sort of, you know, override sort of things. And I think what this is, like you just said there, David. I think where we are right now is, and this is why I say it's really great days and really great times to do, because all we've seen with the rise of the internet and rise of these connections is that we've all started to connect. I mean, this conversation would be impossible. I mean, man, when I grew up, to some, you know, the idea that, you know, if someone said to me, if myself now in my 40s had gone back to myself in my teens and said, "Oh, wait, do you know what? By the time you're, you know, your mid 40s, you're going to be talking to somebody who was, you know, born in the Pacific, now lives in America, and you'll all be communicating on screens lifetime." I would have blown my mind. But
But
once we
here we are.
exactly, but with this technology and this happened. All it's meant is it's basically all it's happened. That's why it is that paradigm shift. Is when you wake up and go, do you know what? We're all basically thinking the roughly the same sort of things, and we understand. Then you start to realize that all it's like the Wizard of Oz moment. You realize that all this fear and all this world we live in is just a little guy in a with a big speaker behind a little, you know, screen
Curtain. Yeah,
projecting it all. And actually, you know, instead of being fearful, you think, wow, now we've got all these opportunities, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I would never go. I would never want to go back. I wouldn't want to go back 10 years. Imagine going back to a world without smartphones. No, good luck to me. I wouldn't want to go back to that world. I love the advancement of civilization and how we're going, and that's why I think it's really exciting times we live in. And like you say, that's what I think is bigger than, and I think it's one of the failings of Bitcoin generally. And while we're lingering on that, I mean, it's hilarious that, you know, Bitcoin still goes on it. And every time I see anything about Bitcoin, it's always about what value it is to the dollar, or this is what it is value to the euro, or, you know, it's all about the value, the value, the value. And in the same world, you're seeing China on a, you know, like you were giving that analogy about pumping, but it's like they've got a dead patient on their slab, and they're just pumping it and pumping it full of blood and hoping that at some point, and if we just keep pumping it full of blood, it's going to relive, but it's not. But this is all focused on this shiny little spell, almost like called money, and it's like that trinket will buy you that. When you break it down, as you said, and it's something you mentioned, we've spoken about before, that when we're on the beach, like you say, to buy a gallon of water, it doesn't, you know, sometimes when I've done it, I've lived on a beach for 18 months, and sometimes it wasn't, I could have, you know, $20 in my pocket, it meant nothing. I could have 10,000 bolivares in my pocket, the local currency, didn't mean anything. But if I had a gallon of water and it was like, oh wow, you know, I'll swap that gallon of water for some trainers because he wants some trainers. That's the currency, and it can.
exactly.
And that's the thing that most of people don't realize, that most of the world right now, that's how they live their lives. They're trading on values of things, and this is one of the failings of Bitcoin. And I'm really keen, and it really inspires me that I don't hear anyone around the sort of safe community really talking about the value of safe against currencies of fear, or it's, oh, look at this, what's safe coin value compared to the value of gold, because it's bigger than that. It's about, that's the paradigm shift. It's understanding that resources are shared, like the ants colony, you know, and we can all resources can be circulated and used and stuff. Sorry, I've just gone off on a tangent, but it's just, that's what really excites me about this, where we are right now.
Yeah, and a lot of people may be curious, like, am I in favor of gold and silver? Do I favor Bitcoin, the dollar? And just like you said, you brought me back to the basics, and I favor whatever buys me that gallon of water.
Mm.
I favor whatever buys me the food that I need to survive. I favor whatever pays for my rent. I favor whatever gets me the fuel to drive my car. And that's why I said I don't have a favorite. I'm neutral. I'm in favor of whatever works. So if the dollar goes to nothing, and you know it completely burns, and everyone decides, hey, you know, we'll take gold and silver, fine, that's what I got. Hey, we'll take Bitcoin, fine, that's what I got. Hey, we'll take Safecoin, fine, that's what I got. I said, oh well, you know, we're at World War III, and none of the currencies mean anything because we have no internet connection. All the satellites are gone. I'll take some bullets. Fine, that's what I got. I know I'm being a little extreme in my situations, but that's the point I'm trying to say is whatever gets me what I need, that's the currency that I'll use because that's what they take. And as the old saying goes, when in Rome, do as Rome does.
Hmm.
So you're going to have to pay them the currency for the product or service that you need from them. And hopefully, because I see a wave of unemployment coming just because technology is replacing a lot of the manual labors that we usually do. I'm hoping that we can start turning in our machines, our phones, our computers, our tablets to start working for us because I don't see the wave of technology actually decreasing in terms of replacing human labor. I see it increasing. And, there's all these politicians that, sorry to be political, I'm not really political, I'm just raising the issue that they got this wonderful solution. We're going to bring jobs back. We're going to get people back to work. But the hard reality is, why would you pay someone to wash your clothes when your washing machine does it for 75 cents?
Hmm.
And by the way, the minimum wage is going to take them an hour to wash your clothes, and the minimum wage federally here in the United States is 7.50. So okay, you take your two scales, 75 cents, 7.50. I think I'll go with the 75 cents.
Exactly. I
And
mean,
yeah,
no, God, no, that's why you linger on that point, though. It always makes. I've got to the point now. Whenever I hear anyone going about, and it started. I've heard it over here. People going, "Oh, I see that like you say, machines are going to take it all over," and all these people that are working in Burger Kings and I think, man, this conversation would have happened 120 years ago when they looked at it and gone, "Oh, but without the slave trade, all these poor people are living and they're surviving, making sugar plantations, and well, they can." No, no human being should be working in Burger King. Doesn't matter if they're paying £100 an hour or $100 an hour. It's not. Man, we're the greatest things are expressions of consciousness, and what we expect them to go and work in Burger King for I don't care whatever the wages, and so what, so like you said, so they can pay their rent. That's what people want to do. I mean, if someone's got a love for making burger, that's great, and this is where I think the paradigm shift comes, because we've lived in a time where creativity has just been pushed out of us as not taught in schools. It's not encouraged, and it's all about just go, like you say, go and find a job and do what you have to do and get on that wheel and keep running and running and running and running and running, and then eventually you'll get a house and you'll retire for 10 years and live your days and die. And that the paradigm shift is where people are going to go, do you know what we need to do? Anything. If I like, but maybe someone's really good at making burgers, great, then that's their passion, that's what they want to do, and they can be rewarded for that. If they make really good tasty products, they get rewarded for it, whereas
and
at the moment,
hopefully, and
go on.
hopefully they can just raise their own restaurant.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm saying. That's the paradigm shift where do you know what I mean? Like, it's like this is an inevitability that's going to go on everywhere, and this is what I'm saying. And I think and sometimes, and that's why I'm fascinated to sort of someone new, because you've got experiences. These conversations are really first world conversations, because in the rest of the world there's so many people that live like this anyway. They don't care about what where the World Trade Organization has put a tariff on it that says you can't trade this. How much of this, I don't know. I'll ask you, how much of the world do you think right now of the trade in the world right now, if you could stand and you could get in a spaceship and you could look down and you had a computer big enough to understand every little bit of trade going on, how much would you say percentage of that would be done on the as they call it, the black market, compared to the open market?
I wouldn't care.
Exactly. I would say at least 60% of the world's trade right now is being done in black market. So this is what I'm trying to say. There's an inevitability about us as the human species, that all the things that's what I'm saying, that so many of this world right now, they don't care about the IMF or the World Trade Organization or what the price of gold is or how many bitcoins you can get for a pound, sterling. All they care about is, like you said, they're going out every day and they're living in the real world, and they're living amongst nature, and they're living amongst having to worry about, whether the monsoon or whether malaria is going to come and bite their ass or something. And it's hilarious, because the discussions we have, and I think so much discussion about the whole Bitcoin community and the cryptocurrency seems to be focused about, us in the first world and how we're going to survive with the new collapse of fear. And it's like, well, I don't worry about it, because the rest of the world, that's what maybe the old analogy that's in the Bible, that's shared in a lot of old, um, tech saying the meat will inherit the earth, and maybe that's the whole point of the safety net, that they're going to inherit the earth, because they were like, well, we don't care about the value of gold, or how much my mortgage is worth, and I've never had to spend my life going for education to learn what it's like to become a technician in a service call center or working Walmart. I don't know.
Yeah, that actually brings me back to the conversation I had on John's podcast about value. And I was trying to say that a lot of people's value is in nominal terms. They see a higher number. And I had a conversation with a relative, and he told me, well, why can't the government just give money out to people? I said they could, and they do. And he's like, well, then everybody would be happy, because we have more money. I said, more money does not mean more productivity. You see, all more money does is just raise prices. And the ones that get to spend it first get the most benefit, and then it depletes after that. And he thought about it for a second. I said, well, let me put it in this sense. Let's say I create a currency, and I create two of, David's currency. I'll call it David dollars. And I have two avocados to sell you. Okay, so I give you one currency. So you have one David dollar to buy one avocado. So let's say I generate another one. I create, 8 more David dollars. Well, I still only have 2 avocados, but you have a whole lot more currency. So that's what I was trying to, emphasize. The real wealth has always been in productivity. The real wealth has always been in resources. The more resources and more productivity we have, the more wealthy we are. And an easy example, what people like is that pizza analogy. You have 10 guys in the room and you have 10 pizzas. Oh, great. You can distribute 1 pizza per guy. Okay, no problem. What if we are able to create 20 pizzas? We just got wealthier. Why? Because we have 2 pizzas per guy now. So if you increase productivity, you increase the wealth of an economy. And that's what I was referring to when I said, if you distribute a currency based on productivity, you give value to that currency. Because not only is it in demand, but it is derived from productivity. When you just create a currency arbitrarily without any productivity, you're actually just decreasing its value in terms of resources, value in terms of productivity. And it's hard for people to wrap their minds around it, because we live in a society that everything is in nominal terms. It's in dollar terms, but they give no sense to how much it actually buys. They're like, oh, I'm richer because I have more, but it's not true. Did you know that you could buy a stick of gum for like 5 cents, some 20 years ago? 5 cents. You know how much a stick of gum costs today? $1 some. That same stick of gum. So, are you richer because that stick of gum is, it costs you $1 some, but back then you could have bought it for 5 cents. You could buy 20 sticks of gum for $1. So, a lot of people, they're so afraid of this deflation. And I had this discussion about deflation. Sorry, I'm going off on another tangent.
No, go ahead, bro.
Yeah. But deflation and inflation, they're so scared of inflation. But inflation is okay if it's derived from productivity. So if you generate more currency because there's more avocados, it's okay, because it's still 1 avocado per dollar generated. If you create more pizzas, same thing. It's still 1 pizza per token. Chuck E. Cheese had the Chuck E. Cheese tokens. I don't know if they still are circulating, but I think you can find some on eBay. But the point is, you could exchange those tokens for things. And so if they created more pizzas and you can exchange tokens for more pizzas, guess what? The value of that token, even though it's probably a copper piece that was arbitrarily created, it had value because of the productivity that's backing it. And I think the Safe Network is an enormous amount of potential if we sort out the economics of it. But if SafeCoin is derived from productivity, then the more productivity that we give to the network, the more SafeCoin that will be distributed. And my hope is that I did some number crunching and I was really looking at it and I said, I can't believe this is possible. It didn't even look right. It looked like there was something wrong with my formula. But I tried to calculate deduplication and it ended up that SafeCoin will exponentially increase in buying more and more storage as long as the farmer population kept growing. And I said, this is incredible. This is impossible. It can't be. But I looked at the effects of deduplication combined with a continuously growing population of farmers, and I said, holy cow, this is amazing. So we very well could start off with, one SafeCoin buys like 1 gigabyte, just theoretically, for example, and then end up 5 years later that one SafeCoin buys 1 terabyte or 10 terabytes or a petabyte. I mean, that it is just so crazy because of the rate that the technology advances as so long as the farmer population continuously grows. But if the farmer population does not continuously grow, then we run into a situation where if the demand exceeds the supply, then you're going to end up having what's called shortage. The storage will fill up. So I'm very, very curious to see what will happen with this because we've never seen this kind of situation before. But it's going to be very interesting for farmers because if you get in early, you have the best opportunity, as they call it, the low-hanging fruit situation. So just like Bitcoin, but unlike Bitcoin, I really, really hope that we can find ways to make SafeCoin accessible, the difficulty of farming the same now as it will be 10 years from now. And it's one of my passions to create solutions to see how I can solve that problem. But that's like a whole other topic.
David, I mean, this is one of the push and pulls maybe of something like that, the drive behind N99, because I'm my way of looking and thinking, okay, I can give you right now the scenario right now. It's difficult as it is with everything for anyone to create and be creative in the world out there because there's so many barriers. So I think, okay, then it's a bit like, okay, right. My artwork will only be available on the N99 on Safe Network. So then it's kind of like, okay, if you want to live in a world where you're not seeing all the best bands, you're not seeing all the best musicians, all the best films, then great. But that's like life. Some people choose to go and watch Taylor Swift, they go and watch Transformers 5 and they go to a shopping mall and that's their life. Hey, that's free choice. I'm all about live and live. I mean, I'm not anyone can do what they like. But that's how we do it. You go, okay, right. And that's how you start to say, okay, if you want to make things attractive, you say, okay, make it full of attraction, attract the people that are creating the great stuff. And that's where I don't think many people have really understood about this is where it's going to transform the world in, I think, in a very short space of time. Because there's so many creative people out there right now that because of the way that the industry is, and so we could pick any industry, the music industry, the art industry, the film industry, anything, they're all just focused on centralization, making the most bucks as they can for as little output as possible to basically please the very common, basically the teenage girl market. Well, and they think that's it. So at the end of the creative, well, there's so much creativity and there's so many people out there, and those people are going to be the ones that are going to change everything, and they're going to be the ones that are going to go, right, okay, we're only putting our stuff in the new world. It's the analogy me and Daniel talk about a lot. It's like we set sail now. We're off across to to a new landscape, and the only way you're going to get the valuability of hearing new stuff is to hear it. Is to come across the new landscape across. So, if, for example, if you want to see one of my pieces of art, or if you want to see, say, Ceiling Demon's new material, the only place you're going to get to see it is on the Safe Network. Now that's people's choice. They might not want to go. I don't want to hear that. But I tell you what, it's the same thing. That's the pull and push of life. I mean, that's how many people do you know that are still walking around rocking a flip phone?
I used to have a flip phone a couple months ago.
There's always one, man. Yeah.
I used to. I finally, and guess what? I'll tell you this because it actually is really relevant. Here's a secret to mass adoption. Make it easier than their current alternatives or current solutions. It's really that simple. There's no complicated science or psychological effect, or it is really, it's so simple, it's stupid. Just make it easier than their current solutions. And this is why. I hated smartphones because they were more expensive. I hated smartphones because they had these, you know, this, to me they were just complicated and whatnot. But my my work required me to send lots of texts. And guess what my phone was when I had to text? It's the buttons, the keypad. You had to press the keypad several times because there's 3 letters. It was a pain. And that's what did it for me. That's when I said, damn it, I'm getting a smartphone. And ever since I got the smartphone, I was able to talk into my phone using the Google Voice app, and it would write out the text for me. And I said, I effing love this. I love
Mhm.
it. I don't care. I don't care that it costs more. I'll take it. And that's what did it for me. And I think that's what does it for a lot of people. Once they realize or they discover that it is easier, whatever the product or service does is easier than their current solution or their current item, then they adopt it. And it's just like cars. Cars is like a prime example. I think I spoke about it in another podcast. I said, why don't you see horses today, on the roads? Because, I mean, believe it or not, it wasn't that long ago that people were riding horses on our roads. Not our paved roads, but, back in the Western times. Well, horses poop all over the place. They kick people, they bite people, depending on the temperament. And horses, and people realize that the car goes faster. It doesn't complain as much, doesn't require as much maintenance. And in fact, your car even takes care of you because it protects you if you get into an accident. The car is just so much more useful. Now, I have nothing against horses. I think horses are great. If cars no longer existed, if we just lost our supply of fuel today, I'm pretty sure people would go back to horses. Why? Because that's the alternative.
Mhm.
So, this all applies to our internet. If the current internet is constantly stealing your data, if the current internet is constantly shutting you down, blocking you out, censoring you, it is mining you, spamming you with ads. I mean, there's a whole list of things that there's things wrong with it. So if the Save network is makes it easier, makes it better, more useful than their current solution, we don't have to do anything.
Mhm.
People will migrate to the Save network just because it's easier. They will migrate to it because they can put all of their account logins and passwords into one and not worry about some authority, centralized authority, having control over it because you're in control of it. I think, if anything, that's what I would talk about, the same network, the fact that you can go into any different website with all your different personas, but you still only have to remember one login.
Mhm.
Login, PIN, and password, that's all you got to remember. And every individual is, I described it as one giant master key ring, and you have a bunch of little different key rings attached to it, but nobody knows the identity of the other one, only those different personas. And Dave Irvine goes into detail about explaining it. I thought it was fascinating. And I said, this is amazing because I have over 30 different passwords and logins. I cannot keep track of it. Even though I frequently go to different sites and logins, I have, the Bitcoin exchange password login, my Google login, you know, I have so many different, my bank logins. And I was just like, I can't keep track. And I'm terrified. I'm really terrified of making weak passwords because I know that people can just brute force the weak passwords. I mean, I saw the Edward Snowden documentary. He said if it's less than 8 characters, they can probably figure it out. They'll just
Mhm.
run a script and they'll match it eventually. So I make my passwords super long and I'm just like, how am I going to remember all of this? And I can't remember each individual one. So just that master identity password, that you go into the Save network and then you're secured and you control it. Nobody else does. You don't have to rely on a central authority. So that to me was a big selling point. I would love to just use that feature just for that alone. Now, then you have the other features that people are going to be able to use the Save network for all kinds of things. I mean, they can literally monetize their skills, their
Mhm.
talents, and that's incredible. because whenever you try to do that on some other corporations, it's like you going onto their property, but you have to abide by their rules. You know, if you go on Facebook, you have to abide by Facebook rules. Same thing with Google. Same thing with Microsoft or Amazon. Wherever you go, you have to abide by their rules, and you're subject to whatever their whims are. And as people say, well, it works for me. I said, yes, absolutely. Go with it. If that's the best you got, then that's what we got. But if something better comes along, then you got to start thinking, well, maybe I should take a look. And that's just like the smartphones. I fought it as long as I could because I watched my budget, and I was like, well, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally I just said, I can't keep up with this texting. I can't do it. My thumbs just don't work fast enough. Give me
Exactly.
give me long minutes to think about something and I can formulate, these huge pages of thought. But tell me to text you quickly and I'm just like, let me just talk to my phone. And I do. That's why I like it.
No, I definitely 100% agree with you, David. I think it's one of the things that's not spoken about, and I think it should be shouted from the rooftops by everyone all the time. Is exactly the simplification of just of having a few passwords and stuff like that. Because again, I always break this down, and I think, well, I don't care, man. I mean, maybe this is how I think, but I think we all think the same sort of way. But I was thinking, when I was a kid, I didn't have all these passwords and that to remember. When did my life get so complicated? I had to have 16 passwords, like you said, they've all got to be, stroke, and even characters. I've got to have hashtags and this, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. It all became so complicated, and I just sort of think anything that's going to make life just easier, I think, will be a massive pull for people. And I think the other one, again, it wasn't something you sort of mentioned there, and I particularly from a lot of um, people I know who are creators, whether it's filmmakers or authors or whatever, the ability for a network to have, they can put something, their storage on it, and it's never going to be lost. Man, trust me, I've lost so many pieces of paper because as I said to you before we went live, I've had the black screen of death on a laptop, and I'm like, oh shit, all that work I did just gone.
Yeah.
And the ability just to think I can just simply just go on somewhere and that's it, and it's retrievable forever and ever and ever as long as we've got internet connection. That is a massive game changer that, again, not many people speak about, but that's what's attractive. I know it's like so many people that I speak to in my circles, they're like, wow, the ability just to have stuff where I can put it up and it's never going to be taken down and it's secure forever and ever and ever. Wow.
Have you ever seen, I'm kind of going off on a little bit, but have you ever seen that video where this guy was offering a 10-ounce gold silver bar and he had a hand of chocolate bars, like Hershey's chocolate?
No, tell me more.
It's a very curious video, but this guy was trying to emphasize that people have no clue what the value of silver is today. That 10-ounce silver bar was like over $100, in today's market. And he was offering them like a 98 cents chocolate bar. And every time they always pick the chocolate bar. But see, that actually rings to what I was saying. They value the chocolate bar because they know that it is nourishment for them. It's good. It tastes good. They don't have any use for the silver bar. Now that's not pertaining to the value. That's just pertaining to what they see as useful. And this is the driving point. He's actually emphasizing something that I'm pointing out, even though it has nothing to do with what his point was. I completely agree with his point. People don't have any knowledge of what, the value of things are today. But the point is, what drives them is what's useful to them. So there are going to be a lot of people that just don't care about cryptocurrency. And I'll tell you why. Because they get their money from their job. And that's what they care about, because they work so that they can pay their rent, so they can buy their food. Now, there will be people like us that just see the future changing, and so that we're getting on board with it. But for most people, and we can't fault them for this, because they're just trying to survive, just like we all are. So, all they care about is, will it make their life easier? And if it does, they'll look at it. You don't
Hmm.
have to convince them. You don't have to say, well, the world's going to change and you have to do this. You don't have to do anything. Just hey, this makes it easier. You can try this. And they're like, really?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. Now, if you tell them that they can actually earn an income just by running an application on their computer, that's the thing that got a lot of people interested in Bitcoin. And it got me interested in Bitcoin, but the barrier kept going up.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping that, the Save Network finally found a way to keep it sustainable and it will be prolonged for a long period. I have no idea if it'll ever fill up, but I do know we have a cap on the supply. So that's one of the things I'm trying to work through, and I'm hoping that the income that the Save Network pulls in will be able to sustain the circulation system. But if people can say, hey, I can't mine Bitcoin. I have to spend $1,000, $10,000 to buy a mining rig. I believe I spoke to Travis about his ASIC miner,
Hmm.
and he said he bought an ASIC miner and it costed him a lot of money. And he was so disappointed because around the time he got his ASIC miner, the Bitcoin price crashed. And for that same amount of money, he could have just bought Bitcoin directly from an exchange. And I said, see, that's what I'm talking about. There's always going to be someone that can farm better than you. Don't assume that you have the best solution. And if that's the case, because I did the same thing in MMO games. I did, I found the best character to farm and the one that can take out the villains most efficiently and quickly and farm the most gold per hour per minute. And I did all the numbers. But somehow someone was able to farm more gold a lot faster and put it on the market for cheaper. So you know what I did? I stopped farming and I just bought it directly. I bought that item directly and then I turned around and resold it. So flexibility, adaptability is vital because we can never assume that the environment is static. In fact, real life is anything but static. It is constantly changing, constantly evolving, and you have no idea who's going to come out with some new technology, who's going to come out with a better solution. You just don't know. So the way I approach life is I just be prepared for everything as best as I can. I don't go hardcore into, getting some cave and stockpiling, millions of gallons of food and water, but I do prepare. I do prepare for as many things as I can. But whichever, like I said, I remain flexible. You should remain flexible. And for a lot of people that like to focus, that's up to them. That's how they want to go about it. That's their style. My way is I just keep my eyes open to every potential. Because I always like to use the fishing analogy. When you go fishing, you're on a fishing boat and you have your lines out. Let's say you put out 4 lines, the rod and reel lines. So you're trolling, and the truth is you have no idea which line the fish is going to hit. You have 4 lines out there, but you have no idea which one's going to hit. Now, take that same analogy. So if you were to just focus on your one rod and reel and say, the fish is going to hit this one line, and I'm going to stay on this rod and reel. And if it hits, I'm going to start reeling it in, and I'm going to ignore the other 3. Well, what if the fish hits the other one, the third line? What if it hits the second line? And I was talking to a colleague of mine that I'm currently helping with his business. His name's Phil. And I was telling him, yeah, you know him, Phil. Yeah. So I was telling him it does not matter the kind of bait that you like. I mean, we always, when we're doing a business, we always like to put out, well, I like this product, and I think a lot of other people will like this product because I like this product. I said, but it really doesn't matter what product you like. It only helps for your passion. But the truth is, it matters to what bait the fish likes. Some fish like the brown lure, some fish like the shiny lure, some fish like the yellow one or the red one. It it matters to the fish, not to you. And that's the one the fish will hit. That's the one he's going to go after. So in business, you have to find out what product your customers like. And whenever I consult a business, I always try to approach them from the consumer's point of view. And I said, I'm going to put myself in a consumer's point of view, and I'm looking at your product and I'm like, is this easier than what I currently have? This is better. Would I like it? Do I feel motivated to use it? and I ask all these different questions. And I don't look at it from I'm trying to sell it to them. I'm looking at it, would I buy it? Would I
Mhm.
try as a consumer? Not as me personally, David Yamanaka, but as a consumer that has no idea about your business, has no idea what your product can do. I'm just looking at it compared to my other options. And guess what? That's what a lot of people do. That's what your
Mhm.
average consumers do. Why do you think they go crazy on Black Friday?
Mhm.
Why? Because it's cheaper on that one day than all the other days. It's not real difficult to figure out what drives people. And that's part of what I do. I crunch the numbers from the company standpoint, but at the same time, I approach it from the consumer's point of view, and I'm looking at it. And one of the things that I keep trying to bring up to the Safe Network is the barrier to entry.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that believe that, oh, if they can farm the Safe coin, it shouldn't be a problem. If they can buy it on the exchange, it shouldn't be a problem. My question is that if I'm a consumer that doesn't know anything about the Safe Network and I actually play a game and I'm happy with the game, let's say the Safe Network had a game on there and I wanted to store my stuff, but I was required SafeCoin to store my my player's information, my status, my weapons, my armor, whatever. But I don't have any SafeCoin. And how long would I have to farm to get enough SafeCoin to pay for it? How frustrated would I be
Mhm.
trying to get that SafeCoin? See, so there's a lot of things that are barrier to entry, and like I said, over time, yes, SafeCoin will get distributed. It will get distributed, and it'll be at some point, just like Dogecoin got distributed, just like Ripple got distributed. There's a lot of ways to distribute a currency, but the thing is, when we're starting out, how hard will it be for someone to really get involved? Will they jump in the water and just not know how to swim and drown? Or will they jump in the water and just be able to float right away? And that puts a big difference because your first experience is their most memorable one. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can remember all
Mhm.
your first experiences with things, and you're just like, you either loved it or you hated it, or you just said, well, I'll just ignore it for a while and come back later. So, it's just basically those three decisions. And if we can tap into the love it experience, they said the first try and they love it, you got a winner. You got a killer app. You got a viral video going. And that's all it takes.
Yeah, David, I think the thing that maybe separates, and I've had a few experiences, working in businesses and trying to set up business myself and stuff like that, and the same frustration is always, anytime I've been in any situation where I've been involved in negotiations or just sat on the edges or anything like, always frustrates me is when I see people who have basically they have an idea, like you're just saying, then the person has the product, the company, or whatever it may be, whatever scale, and their ego will carry them that thought process through. They will never listen to anybody, and you think, don't listen. And I think that's all about this whole thing about where we're this paradigm shift we've been kind of focusing on about all tonight. It's that whole idea of the biggest thing about the paradigm shift is just strip yourself down and get rid of that ego, because it's like you say, the ego goes, oh no, my friend, I I spent $10,000 on this reel will catch me any fish.
Exactly. That
Whereas
happens a lot.
exactly, and that's all ego. Whereas, like you say, the guy who's going to catch the most fish is the guy who's like, no, do you know what? I know what I'm not anything special. I'm just going to go out there and put loads of strings around and catch loads of fish. And that's the big thing about everything, and that's what inspires me a lot about the people I've had in contact around the SafeNet community. And I'm sure you've had the same. There doesn't seem to be any ego involved in it. It's not kind of like it's my way and this is what we're going to drive it through, because almost the Safe Network and what it's starting to glimpse the potential of it is saying to you, look, you've got to strip yourself of your ego, and you've just got to look at things and, like you say, look at everything from a basis of trying to see it from everybody's point of view. And it's always driven me with what we're doing, with building what the apps we're building with N99. It's like, yeah, exactly, make it, promise little, deliver a lot, make it as simple as possible, and we're already pushing against open doors. It's not like there's many people in the creative industries are going, oh no, my friend, I don't want to join a network that all that kind of stuff. How many people do you think in the world out there, my friend, who are really out there creating, really flying the flag for EMI or Decca Records or stuff? Or nah, they don't give a shit, man. They want the new world, and that's what I'm saying. If you can do that, you're already pushing an open door. And if you can just make it easier, and that's the difference. It goes back to the analogy we were just talking about. The reason that T Ford hit it on the nail, and the reason he had mass adoption in his car, he made it easier.
Exactly.
He didn't have a 16 gear car. But you go back to watch some of the films. Honestly, I love doing it. Go back and watch old 20s films and see some of the contraptions that some of the car makers were coming up with. And then bang, along comes T Ford and went, no, simple, 4 sticks, off you go. And that was it. It's
Exactly.
ease of use. It's one of the things I'm amazed by how many people get paid. And like I say, I sat in meetings and I've been to people and they're like way above, getting paid absolute, thousands upon dollars a month. And you think you don't know what you're talking about, and all you are is just some ego, and all your ego is driven from about, oh, if I get this one and if I push it through, I'm going to get myself up that little bit out of the bucket. And they're just all crabs in the bucket, just all pulling each other down, and they all think they're winning. And then it's the old Pink Floyd song. They all think they're winning, but they're all just going to die out, old sad, lonely old men, and and it doesn't really matter. And this is what inspires me about the new world that's coming in the SafeNet community. As I said before, there's no ego about it all. It's just like, here's what we see some of the problems are. This is what this technology is going to give us the ability to give solutions for it. Hey, some of it may work, some of it may work. It's all trial and error, like you say. But that's, you can't go into that with ego. You can't go and go, oh no, my name is David Giacomoco. I own a safe network, and no, you can't do that, because you'll be plowed over. That's the point. The new paradigm is just going to strip people's ego away, because ego doesn't survive in the new paradigm, because we're nothing. I can't answer to, we're always going to meet someone more intelligent than us. I don't care how far down the line you go.
And the one thing that's interesting about ego is it's most valuable just to you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean anything to other people. So, I mean, you're definitely sold on your own ego because it's your ego, but it doesn't mean anything. It has no value to other people other than, wow, he's really confident. That's about it.
Exactly, and the worst thing about that, when you build up that ego, and this is the flip side of this, and it goes back to that very analogy about what you were saying about about resources and everything like that, and it's just a general life comment. I mean, if you grow up on a big ego and you're all about I am this, it's all blah 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 blah. Well, great, you have the biggest cars and all that kind of stuff. But when you have the cold, and when life comes, you have the car crash or whatever life slams into you, it's not going to be the money or how many letters you've got after your name. That's not. It's going to be the good content you put out to people, your goodwill to people, and that ultimately, it's what. I mean, man, I'm not sitting here going, look at me, I've discovered this new idea. No, this has been given to us through oral tradition throughout centuries of, like, it doesn't matter. You can't take the gold with you. You can't take any of it with you. What it all breaks down to is goodwill. And when you're on that beach, like you say, when you're on that, take you back to when you were a child, David, when you're on that beach in Guam, it doesn't matter if your dad was he's the president of the local sugar factory, and look at me, I've got 16-inch TVs and all. It doesn't matter. When you're on that beach with that kid and you fall into the sea, and he's going to come out and save you because you were a good person. And if he thinks, oh, what an annoying little git he was, there's a good chance he might just go, well, the world would be a better place without him. And that's the ego problem. It never works. You've got to understand that goodwill in it. That's the most element of human beings, because that's basically what, as you know, that's what gets us through life. It's that goodwill, how we are to other people. And it's something that ego neglects, because it says, oh, you don't worry about other people, and it's all about me, me, me. And that's exactly the paradigm. You take that out of the human context. That's the difference between a currency that's based on goods and a gold or a magic spell of a bit of paper, as compared to a resource economy. That's the paradigm shifts. It's understanding that this spreads to everything and everywhere.
Yeah. And here's something that a lot of people don't realize. We all have wealth. As long as we have time and energy, we can do stuff. And believe it or not, that's the number one most traded commodity for currency today. You trade your time and energy for fiat, you know.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it's government controlled fiat money, but you go to work and you get government fiat and they get a cut of it every time they tax you. And I find that, you know, completely atrocious, but I'm not going to go fight the government because they'll easily just throw me in jail for not paying taxes.
Mm.
So, you know, I have to go along with it. And the thing is, I'm not raising any tax protests or anti-tax issue. The point I'm trying to make is we've had the wealth. We had the wealth all along. You know, our time and energy, our services, our talents, our creativity, just the simple fact that you can make I'll use baking as an example. You make a cake, right? You make a cake. Imagine that cake is an actual, that's your wealth right there. All you're doing is you're just exchanging it for a medium of exchange. So if you sell that cake for Bitcoin, if you sell that cake for Savecoin, if you sell that cake for dollars, all you're doing is you're taking that wealth that you already had and exchanging it for medium of exchange. And then you can take that and buy something else, you know? Now, the most dominant currency will be the one that buys the most things. And I've always stated that. It does not matter what form the currency is. It's the currency that buys the most things will be the most sought after. And the reason why the dollar is the most popular is because it buys energy, it buys oil. And so, however long that remains, I don't know, because I have a feeling that might change. But
Mm.
if we get a currency distributed globally, and if people start realizing, hey, I can exchange the wealth I already have, the products and services I already have for that medium of exchange, and exchange it with other people, you're going to have what's called a snowball effect. And that snowball effect is just going to spread everywhere. And the banks are just going to say, no, we cannot allow this. You cannot use any other currency but the one we control. And it's obvious why. It's like the movie Liar Liar. I object, Your Honor. Why? Because it's devastating to my case.
Mm.
It's like overruled. Exactly. It's, you know, of course they're going to object because you're now finding a way outside. Because think about this. I know not a lot of people really, you just take 5 minutes out of your day and really think about this and say, if they can create an infinite amount of their currency, I'm referring to the government fiat currency, the dollars, the euros, the yens, if they can create an infinite amount, what is it that they're really after?
Mm.
Right? Because it can't be something that they can create an infinite amount of, because they can create any amount of it that they want. So what is it they're really after? They're after your productivity. They're after your resources, your time and energy,
Mm.
your land, your cattle, whatever, you know, wealth that you have. And a lot of people feel poor. They really feel poor. And the reason they feel poor is because it's so hard to get a hold of that government currency. They have to spend 8 hours a day, and 30% of that goes back to the government that the government created out of nothing and the banks created out of nothing. And then they charge you interest. I mean, it literally is like we're slaves. It's just that we don't see the cage. You know, we're in a cage, but we just don't see it. Or another version, we're in the Matrix. That's, you know, I don't know if you noticed my picture, but I'm a big fan of the Matrix,
Hmm.
the philosophy, because, you know, until we wake up, that's how a lot of us feel. We feel that way, but we just can't see the cage. Where
Hmm.
is it? You know, I don't see the boundaries, but I feel like there's not much I can do inside this little pretend space. And holy cow, one of the biggest things that it's going to be for people is once they realize, hey, I have wealth already. I have time. I can do things. And once they learn how to monetize that into a medium of exchange, whatever it may be, then they're going to find out they have a lot more freedom than they originally thought. And that's one of the things that, a lot of people keep trying to hammer away, but they're going about it wrong. They're trying to overthrow the king. The king, you know how hard it is to overthrow a king? He's surrounded by his guards, he's surrounded by his advisors, and the entire empire, fights and believes in the king. So instead of just fighting, trying to overthrow the king, just leave.
Mm-hmm.
I like one guy on YouTube. His name is Chris Dwayne, and his philosophy is just stop participating in their game.
Exactly.
And it is true that it is very difficult to just ignore. I mean, I can't just stop paying my rent. I refuse to accept dollars. There's a bit of reality that we're going to have to settle with in the meantime. But the nice thing is we are able to transition slowly. Over time, the paradigm will shift and we will be able to say, oh, I can start using this alternative. Then, so, you're using a little bit half and half. Then eventually we'll migrate. We'll migrate into 100% into the alternative. And then, who knows what's going to happen then. But it's going to be interesting.
No, exactly. I mean, man, as you know, I love drawing, and I drew a picture about this years back, and it was I had the analogy then, and use your analogy. It's like to see the farm is to escape the farm. That's exactly it. That's the moment. That's the wake up moment where people realize, like, whoa, 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 and then it's and this is why I think I say I haven't been. I'm not being some person. If you've spoken to me 20 years ago in the 90s and gone, I want to sit and said these are the greatest days to live in, I would have gone, man, no, we've got a long way to go. But now I really do think that, and this is like I said, and I your perfect analogy, like you was just saying then, David, about had there's no point taking on the king. It's like I love playing chess, and I'm sure you do, but
Mm-hmm.
when you see you don't, when you play chess, you don't just go, if you are, and like you say, you have to play some of the board of chess, and then go, okay, this is what I've got to do. You don't just go attacking the queen. The way to win, it's a strategy. You don't. I mean, it's hilarious. You can tell instantly the beginner player, because he just goes, right, I'm going to get my queen out, and
Yeah.
it's like you're man, you're easy. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying, because that's the perfect. That's why chess is a great game, because it gives you the analogy of, like, it's a long process. The only way you're going to beat someone easily and quickly is if they mess up and they're the idiot, and they again carry ego into it. But like you say, and I think this is the moment we're getting to right now. I think we're in this process, like you said, Dave. We're like you say, that's the real wake up moments. We can all just step away, and we have other solutions and other ways and other means, and like you said, do you know what I mean? Because it is, and this is what that wake up moment means. And it's a great one to use the Matrix as an analogy, because it's a fact film that I've I could talk about for hours, but it is that moment, and that's the illusion of it all. You realize, like, wow, we've just all been under a spell of these magic bits of paper that have got kings and queens on them, that because it's got her face on it or his face on it, that somehow that's important and it bestows this value. And it's just that it's just an illusion, and all it's going to be, like you said, David, it's a snowball effect. And once people get to do that, that's why I really do think we're in a great awakening right now, because I see it everywhere around the world, and that's with these baby steps of this internet as we got it right now, with these, just a few servers, but the ability for us all connect has just opened that way. And I don't think there's anything anybody can do. I think if we're going to I don't want to get into politics, but great. So what's the solution? Build more walls, put us behind more, well, that's not going to work. We've seen that one fail with communism. It ain't going to happen again. So I just think I think it's going back to where we kind of started this conversation before. I just think it's inevitable, and I mean, whether Safe Network and and Made Safe is the one that happens, or whether it's another version, it's like we're just standing at the edge of the beach, and you're seeing it's coming. It doesn't matter how it's going to come; it's going to come back. Now, I really want to sort of, while I'm hearing a conversation with you, because I know we have our ants meetings, and I know we discuss all this and this, but now I've got you one to one, and we're in this conversation. Tell me about your life in Guam, and what age did you move, and what memories have you got for it, and do you think that influences anything how you see life right now? Because I mention this because it was one of the greatest things, and I'd say to a lot of people, try to go out and see the world as much as possible. Because I think once you go out and you experience other environments and live in those environments, not just a tourist sitting in a 5-star beach. I mean, spend some time there. You start to see life differently, and it does open you up as a human being, and it does open your operating system to how other things and how other processes, and nothing else, is to get you amongst other people. So I think it's a really great thing that it's always shaped me, and I'm just wondering, someone who's grown up there and your experiences, do you think it shapes you to what how you are now? And again, what's your memories of it? And tell me a bit more about Guam.
Sure. Guam is, just for people who don't know, Guam is kind of near Japan. It's in the Pacific Ocean. It's a very small island. It's a territory of the United States. So if you're born in Guam, you're automatically a U.S. citizen. You're being born in Guam, you're considered Guamanian. So that would be your like your nationality. But they refer to us as Pacific Islanders. So whenever I fill out tax forms or whatnot, they're like, "Oh, he's Pacific Islanders, from one of those islands." So, anyways, I think that Guam actually gave me the opportunity to have a unique perspective, because contrary to what most people would think, they think that Guam is isolated, but in fact, Guam is very aware of the rest of the world.
Mm.
In fact, right now, Guam is in between the feud of China and the United States. They're like right in the middle of it. Hawaii is a lot closer to the mainland than Guam is. Guam is smack dab in the middle of it. So you might hear some news, because whenever they send stealth bombers, they send it to Guam.
Mm.
So Guam is like right there on the front line. I hope my island's going to be okay, but it's not in a very good place to be right now, especially as tensions are escalating.
But
And
that's
yeah,
always been the case, though, David, hasn't it? Because that's the whole point. It became into United States territory was down to the Spanish Civil War,
yeah,
and because of that was the stuff between the Spanish and the Americans, and it was a great strategic point. So, but it seems to be just like you say, although if you were going to pick it, this beautiful island in the middle of, surrounded by hundreds of miles of sea, but in the middle of nowhere, but it's still, even that, it's like, oh man, even here you still, it's almost like there's nowhere you can go. I mean, that's why I feel sorry for the people, like, man, even in the middle of nowhere you still have to come
yeah.
and
You're still in the middle of the conflict
Mm.
of the two titans. So, well, my life in Guam is really, I really enjoyed it, because I got to be a part of nature. I mean, like really one with nature. And the thing about nature is it does not care about your culture. It does not care about your humor. It does not care about your fears. Nature has its own thing. To me, it's like pure reality. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that fish is gonna bite you whether you're a gorgeous supermodel or you're a rich, fat cat, or just a poor homeless guy. It's gonna get you because you're invading its turf.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not care. And that's one of the things. It's like, harsh but truthful reality. And when you're involved with nature at that level, you have a tendency to look at other things in a similar way. So when I went spearfishing, or just learning the survival traits on the island, I enjoyed fishing a lot, even though I get sick to my stomach because I get seasick. I have a very sensitive equilibrium. So I hated going out in the boat, but I understood the philosophy and, man against nature and that kind of thing. And so it gave you a sense of empowerment at the same time, because you realize, hey, I can do this. And the funniest thing, I know a lot of people love this show. It's called Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was the most funniest thing I've ever seen, because here are people on this island surrounded by food everywhere, and they're starving. And I was just like, you can't be there. They just keep eating coconuts. That's all they could eat. I mean, credit to the people that were on there. You know, I understood they weren't born there, so okay, they didn't learn the knowledge of how to survive on the island. You know, there was a lot of things that they could have done, and I spotted them so easily. It was amazing. You know, just like a little side story. One of the things, I had this beautiful rod and reel, and I started casting the rod and reel. And the thing is, the gears in the rod, it stuck and it wouldn't work anymore. And oh, this is an expensive rod and reel. It cost $50, and back then it was expensive for $50. And so I was like, how am I going to catch my fish? So I looked around, and there was this tangled ball of rod line, you know, the nylon line. It was tangled up. So I just unstrung it. You know, I had a good maybe 30 feet, took my hook, and I said, well, I was using a lure, you know, those plastic lures to cast. So I said, well, I can't cast it because I can't attach it. So I just went and I did what they taught me. I got the little crab, they call it duk duk. It's a little crab that uses like the snail shells. So
Hmm.
you take it out of the snail shell and you pull off its butt, you know, and you sink the hook into the butt. It's like its stomach area. And you just toss it out in the water, and bam, caught a fish right away. In fact, I spent an hour casting and I caught a fish within 5 minutes. That simple little thing worked, and my $50 rod and reel just crapped out on me. I realized it does not matter.
No.
You know, that's where I got my analogy. It does not matter what kind of lure, because my lure was sparkly, it was shiny, it had all the little things that just caught my attention, but the fish didn't care. Probably they nipped at it, didn't like the taste. It's like, this is rubber. I don't like this. They hit onto my bait, the little crab in stomach, and bam, they took it and they wouldn't let go. So
Just just on a again, I'm just trying to place myself there. I mean, when you're on the say like the beach you're talking about, would it would be one of those ones that it's a very sort of slow, shallow descend into the ocean, so there's lots of coral, and you could, like you say, go, or is it one of those that would like go out for a while then and drop? When can we kind of paint a picture of what? Because you said spearfishing, and immediately I'm thinking, okay, that's like coral, and you're walking around and your feet, you have to watch your feet being bitten by, you know, stingrays and you know, being, I mean, one of the things is it's one of the small things that, again, people, you know, they always, again, I did myself then, I pointed towards stingrays and they go, oh, when you, it's not stingrays, you cut man, the pain you get when you cut your foot on a coral, and then you don't realize, or one of those rocks under the water, and you're like, you don't realize until you come out and you've got blood coming out, you're like, ow. So again, I mean, so sort of paint me a picture of the actual, because you said spearfishing, and I'm trying to sort of, you know, sort of focus in my mind to see what, you know, exactly what you're describing.
yeah, on Guam, if you're standing on the beach, you can walk out about, I say about 200 feet,
Hmm.
and you're on the reef. So it's only about, it goes to about waist high, depending on the tide. So if it's low tide, you can walk all the way out to the edge of the reef. And at the edge of the reef is a drop off, and it goes really deep. It goes, you know, down 50 feet, and it just keeps going down the further out you go. And that's where, you know, you get into the deep sea. So on the reef, you do casting. And so since it's waist deep, you know, there's a lot of room for you to cast and just troll. And the fish that are in the reef area are the smaller fish. So, but you can also swim because it's waist deep. You can also swim and on the reef, and you can also go out to the deep end. The reason why we don't go out on the deep end is because, first of all, there are sharks out there.
Mm.
And second of all, the current can get so strong that it can pull you, because the current inside the reef is strong. But if you go into the deep ocean, it's like Nemo, you know, don't go out there, Nemo. It's too scary. Well, yes, there's a reason. The current gets so strong. A lot of people, even professional divers, drown because they get either trapped under the reef, because they get pulled out on the outside and then they get trapped underneath it and they can't get out. And they're professional divers. And so without their buddy or help, you know, some of them, they drown. There's a lot of people that end up drowning. So it is very dangerous. And some things that they teach you. And a couple of times I had to save a friend because we were near this called Marine Lab, and we were right at the edge where the waves crash on the reef. And yeah, we were stupid because we purposely sat there and let the waves crash on us and screamed at it, going, ah! And the waves would smash us down. And, we were dumb teenagers, but that was fun for us, I guess. Well, one of my friends, he didn't tell us that he couldn't swim. And, being on an island, you're like, how could you not know how to swim? So the current started pulling him out, but we were still in the reef area. And I realized that he was panicking. So I went and I swam in. And I realized the only way to make him stop panicking is to push his head above the water so he would not feel like he's being out of control and drowning. So I swam under the bottom and I lifted him up. And I was holding my breath so he would stop panicking. Then my other friend went and got him and started pulling him back in. And then after that, I just, waited for the wave to recede and then I just climbed out. Because one thing you learn when you're surfing or boogie boarding or diving is don't fight the current. You're just going to exhaust yourself and you'll drown. So you either go with it or you wait for it to pass. And you have to remain calm. Because if you start panicking, you're going to suck in water and you'll drown.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily, I've never had that point because I have pretty good discipline. So I never really panic. I got some scary moments where I was pounded by a wave when I was boogie boarding, and the wave smashed me into the sand. And I did not know that there was a second wave behind that one because I was trying to ride it. And I was coming up, and the second one smashed me down before I had a chance to get air. So I was stuck under the water for a while, but I just, remained patient. And I could feel the wave current pass. And then once it passed, and I just swam up and took a deep breath of air, and I was like, oh, I almost died there.
Yep. I mean, that's
Crazy stuff.
yeah, again. This plays into what you were just saying. We kind of like maybe a theme of our conversation tonight, David. It's like these are the skills that you know what I mean, have no value in the world out there. I mean, someone's going to give you you can't put that on your CV. It's not like, oh, I know how to do that. That's not CV material. It's not rewarded. But equally, these are the skills that you learn. I mean, one of the things I've had similar experiences, and one of the things I was just instantly when you told that story, I was thinking. I had the same sort of thing. I was taken by a current under, and I remember the first thing doing again. That was only because a local had told me. He said, "Look, always count the waves because they come in batches. They come in like sevens or they come in tens. And if you know that the biggest one's going to be number 7, right? Yeah, and it's just that kind of thing. And it's amazing really because it's like life itself. You get told this stuff and you think I'm never going to that's never going to be applicable. And then in that moment, man, that information just comes through like a shining light. And you're like, oh, I'm glad I actually picked that one up. And that's life itself, man. So were you there for most of your teenage years then?
Yeah, I was there until I graduated. Graduated in Guam. And then I went to the mainland to go to college. So I did my college time in Wisconsin. But a lot of the things that I brought from Guam, just, the reality, I guess you could call it my reality show, is I applied it to business and I applied it to other things. Because the things that saved my life when I was, going up against nature, because nature doesn't take excuses. You can give your boss excuses. You can give your wife or, you can give excuses to all these people or your friends, but nature just doesn't care. Nature's going to take you out or you're going to have to adapt and survive. Mm-hmm. So the things that I learned, to be patient and work through the problem, that's what helped me survive. It's also the same thing that I applied to my business ethics is I know the Save Network, because we're talking about the Save Network. I know it's going to fall. I know. And I told people that. I said, it's like a baby, we don't know what it's able to handle or not handle. And it's going to find out just like we're going to find out. It's going to find out that if you touch the stove, it burns your hand. It's going to find out that it can't run as fast as it thinks. It's going to find out it can't jump as high, or that it's just like a child. And a child has no idea what their limitations are until they find them. And it is our job as the early adopters to be as patient and work through the problems and also guide it as best we can. So in a lot of ways, we're like newborn parents where we're going to have to take care of this network. And I have no delusions whatsoever that things will happen, because they do. I've been in development of other technologies for a while, and the same thing happens across the board. But the thing that helps me succeed is I work through the problem, and I keep adding solutions, as many as I can, because as my old boss used to say, we just throw frogs against the wall and see what sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one we go with, because it takes a huge amount of humility to admit that we don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that are out there that I know what's best for the world, and they go out there and they said, vote for me. I know what's best. I will solve your problems. And I'm like, oh, good luck with that. I'll just kind of keep to myself over here and try and work out my own problems. What
Mm-hmm.
works best for me. Just I hear that term a lot, this is the best diet. Go it this way. And I found out that everyone's body's different, and everybody's reaction to diets are different as well. Some diets work for some people, while it has terrible consequences for others. So we all have to just find out what works best for us, individually. And that's a great thing, because it means we're not clones. Because if the same solution applied to everybody, then I'm pretty sure we'd be clones. We're all from the same DNA, the same reaction to the same allergies, to the same treatments, all work the same.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of scary. We'll probably end up being a hive mind. So
Exactly. David, I mean, to that very point, what you just saying, then the guy who's coming and going, I can solve this. I've got the answer. Man, it goes back to that same analogy we just used
bots.
earlier on. It's the guy with the biggest fishing rod. It's Mister
Yeah.
10,000. It's Mister 10,000 pound reel walking in, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. But do you know one of the things I'm glad. It's interesting that you say that, because there's a lot of synergy to what I was going to say. One of the things that I learned from my time of just living in nature and on the beach and stuff and that, and just living amongst that kind of thing, was adaptability. I learned immediately, like it goes back to the same thing about the fishing rod. I can come in here with I could go in and buy this great nice tent and stuff like that, but you learn to adapt, and you learn to use, as we were saying earlier on, different tools, and you think, okay, this can make that, and I start to try out things, and it's one of the things, one of my great, I used to love it particularly because we lived in Venezuela. It was right on the edge of this. We had right up against us, obviously, the jungle. And I remember one time just sat we had a little place just a little camp on the beach, and I remember seeing these leaf cutter ants came in, and they just basically, over a space of maybe 6-7 hours, just dismantled one of our water bottles and just took it all away. And I was like, adaptability, and and I was. It was just a real fascination of like, wow, nature really doesn't give a toss. It will come along, it will destroy anything you like you said, it will take it all away. And then you start to realize, like, okay, so the locals here adapted. They don't put those things there. And that's where that's what I've always learned. Pick up tools, learn things, don't be egotistical to think you know all the solutions. The old guy, in the village, he recently he's got to where he has, because he knows a lot of tricks about how to do certain things, and learn from that person. And that's one of the things that I learned from it. And I don't know. I think more people could do with a dose of getting back out into nature, really. And I do. I think it's one of those things that maybe a lot of people could do with being taken out of the city, and sometimes just go into mountains, go into nature, and understanding. Because as you said, David, and I think we've all become a bit weak in our culture, especially in the first world, where we think that this paradigm is going to last forever, and there's always going to be shopping malls, and I'm always going to be able to the supermarket and get my nice little packed £1 steak sirloin, and it's going to be and they think this is going to go on forever. But man, all you need is one hit by a meteorite or something, or one flood or something, and we're back into and they can't go to, there's no more supermarkets. And ultimately, as you said before, that's the reality of life. That's real life. Real life is nature. And like you said, nature doesn't give a toss. She'll take you away from every attachment you've got. And she doesn't give a toss. She's just going to suck you back into the earth that you came from in the first place.
Yeah, one of the things that I notice about like people that are wealthy that have a tendency to dominate over other people is they're always brought down back to earth from diseases,
Mm,
you know, a virus that it does not matter how much money you have, how many people you control. It does not matter, your title or your political status. If you're sick, it's going to come after you and it doesn't care. And at that point, you're going to have to realize, well, I need to use what works, what will cure me. And that at that point, they're now under the nature's rules. They're not under their own rules. And I think sometimes we get a little, because everybody has their ego. I mean, there's no denying, there's nothing wrong with being proud of the things you've done. I mean, good credit to you for all your accomplishments. But at some point, we have to realize that we don't live in our own universe, that we're a part of the whole world, you know, and we like to think that we have control over our environment, control over our lives, but there are times where you're going to be reminded you're not in control of certain things, you know, and when a bug hits you, you're not in control. The bug's coming after you and it doesn't care. So I think that it's really great that people should immerse themselves in nature and learn to humble themselves,
mm,
because I think humility is what really will help people survive a lot better. I mean, arrogance will take you so far in leading people, but you could lead them right off a cliff and then they're all going to die. But if you're humble enough to say, well, I'm listening to someone who I don't agree with, because I like to do this a lot. There's a lot of people on our forum that they raise a lot of contentious things and they disagree. Some of them may seem rude, but I appreciate them raising the issue because they take me out of my arrogant state and saying, look at this. Is this a threat? Will it work? Is there something wrong here? Should we look at it? And like I said, I like to look at everything. Even if I don't agree with them, I will still look at it and I will try to work through it and find solutions, even if it never happens. As the old saying goes, I'd rather be prepared and have a solution than have a disaster and no solution, because that's even worse. So I create all kinds of scenarios for the safe network to try and say, okay, what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? Do we have a solution? Do we have a way to solve it? And some people, it becomes exhausting for them because, oh, we don't have this time to spend on all these hypothetical situations. And I said, you don't have to. I'm doing it. I'll work through it because this is what I enjoy doing. I look at all the things that could happen, that might happen, and I try to find solutions for them. And honestly, I don't have solutions for everything. I just do the best I can. And like I said, I'm always hoping somebody smarter than me will come along and solve it. And
mm,
that would be really great. And I'm really glad that there's a lot of new people coming on the forum
mhm,
and they're really smart. I mean,
mhm.
they're programming smart, they're coding smart, and they're just when they talk to each other, it's amazing to watch. It's like hearing a foreign language. But I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the things that they're doing and the ideas that they bring to the table, because I admit I can't solve it on my own, and I don't think that the MadeSafe will be able to solve it on their own. I think as a whole community, we have a better chance of making the Safe Network mass adopted. We have a better chance of making it successful, sustainable, and hopefully as an investor, it'll be profitable. I mean, there's no reason we all can't be rewarded for our efforts, being early adopters and helping to fuel this new creation of technology. And I think that the Internet 2.0 is long overdue. I think the current internet is on its last legs. I mean, with the way that the servers are imposing controls. One thing that I'm surprised about is that the corporations, to their credit, are pushing back. Not all of them, but some of them, I won't name them, they are pushing back because I keep up to date as to, the government's trying to say you need to give us back doors and they're saying no, we refuse. And there's some of those stories that are coming out, and I was just surprised by it. But I realized, they're looking for their own survival, because
Mm.
if you were a company and if your drive was profit, and if you realize that if you do this certain thing, you're going to lose all of your customers or a huge group of your customers, why in the world would you comply? You would avoid it as much as possible, because it's going to be devastating to your business model. So that's happening naturally. And I would hope that a lot of others would, see that and follow suit and say, hey, we can't put up with this, because our customers aren't gonna we're just gonna kill ourselves. You might as well ask us to close up shop now.
Exactly, and this is
Yeah.
one of the things again, David. This is one of the things that people, like, again, a business, a corporation. These things are no different, other than they're still within this bubble that we're floating on this planet. They're entities. All they are is examples of how we do things, and that's why this is one of the things. Again, it's not really spoken about, and I mean, when you hear companies now, I'm surprised as well that more companies don't come out, because it's like the person that none of us in this planet.
Nobody wants to take on the king.
Exactly, but no, but equally, David, this is what I'm saying. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO of a company or anything. We all we all value privacy. We all, especially when you get to a company level and stuff like that. You want to know that the fact that we can have a discussion and this stuff is going to be kept between us, because it breaks down. You take it away from like I say, companies are no more than just constructs of what we are and the reflections of our consciousness. And the idea of that anyone would just allow people to come in and backdoor them and view on that. It was like, well, that's what I always say to people. The politicians that always want these things and they want to have more and more control. I'm like, well, I don't see you living in a glass house. You're living in a house with brick walls like me, because you don't want everybody peering into your life and knowing everything about you. And
Exactly.
that's, but this is what I'm saying. This is what I was trying to say earlier on about that. It is, as you said before, it's that matrix moment, because you think, well, there isn't, a law only has the power when people subserve to it. The people who, that's the whole point. That is the matrix moment. When you do realize, like, oh, wait a minute, there is no superpower. You don't have to, if you don't pay you. It's the analogy you used, Dave. I remember the analogy story you mentioned before, that when you realize that your money isn't your money, that you can't actually get hold of it. And it's that same point where people realize, like, well, wait a minute, whoa, I can participate, it's my ownership, I control it. And that's going to be the thing that's going to change everything. This is what I'm trying to say. I don't think that goes from the individual right to the company, the corporation, because it's just reflections of all of us. We all like our private moments. We all like our public moments. We all like idea of sharing things, and sometimes we like to have things that are in private. And I'm always amazed, and when I hear people go, companies saying, "Oh, it's a great thing," and like, yeah, I'm thinking, well, I don't. That instantly makes me think, right? If I had any business with you, I would withdraw it straight away, because I don't like the idea that that's how slack you think about your business operation, that you're happy to give other people access to it. I just think
Yeah.
it's but all these things. The point I'm trying to make is that people see that they see as, oh, it's a corporation, or it's a gut. Corporations and states are only reflections of human consciousness. They're not entities. There's not such a thing as a corporation. There isn't such a thing as a state. They're just things we like you were saying earlier on, we feed. And the only way to make that thing disappear is to walk away from it and don't feed it. And that's where we are right now. This is the brink we're on right now. And that's the child, as you keep mentioning, that's the child that we're raising. The new child that says, oh, wait a minute, we don't need all that control. But that's all it is. They're only reflections of us, and it's nothing else.
Yeah. So if you want to starve the beast, to put it in a graphic depiction, if you want to starve the beast, take your productivity and channel it.
Mm?
Channel it into the alternatives. And I think people will do that if the alternative, like I said, is easier. And if you want to make SafeCoin successful, it has to be accessible, it has to be spendable, and it has to be divisible. We need a currency that makes it easier to transact. I mean, that's the whole point of a currency, is to transact. And one of the things that I found difficult with cryptocurrencies right now is you always have to get a wallet to get Bitcoin. You had to get a wallet to get Dash or Doge, or if you wanted to get those currencies, you either had to mine it or you had to buy it off an exchange. And I actually was doing the troubleshooting for a lot of people during the crowd sale because a lot of them were having so much confusion about the wallets, about, where is the MadeSafe coin? Is it on the address? Is it in my wallet? I can't see it in my wallet. There was just so much technical stuff that I really hope that SafeCoin will be as simple as sending an email.
Mm.
That's it. If we can find that one app that just allows you to send an email to somebody, because that's the one thing everyone already has. Do you have an email? Yes. Send an email, you got SafeCoin. Now the steps that it takes for them from that email to get SafeCoin, they have to sign up with Safe Network, get an account, whatnot. But the point I'm trying to drive at is, if you were on the street today and you wanted to give somebody Bitcoin, which is easier, handing them a $10 bill or asking them to get a Bitcoin wallet?
Mm.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, right?
Mm.
It's like, I can't give them Bitcoin because, we're face to face. And I mean, surprising as it may be, most transactions do happen face to face. You still go into a grocery store, you still talk to friends. In fact, we're technically face to face, even though it's through the internet. But yeah, we could basically communicate directly one on one. You're not some invisible, picture that I'm looking at, although my picture is. But you can hear my voice, so there's a real person behind it. Anyways, if we were on the street today and we had no idea about anything else, the one thing that I liked is the fact how easy it is. You don't have to trust a physical transaction because you have it in your hand. I placed it in your hand. I can't take it back unless I mug you, unless I knock you out over the head and then take it back. But once I give it to you, you have it in your hand, it's there. But if I say, oh, Tim, I need you to sign up and get a Bitcoin wallet. And you're like, okay, how do I do that? Well, you got to go to this website and download this application and then put in your login ID. And then you have to give me your address so I can send it to you. Okay, it's a couple steps and people will work through it if they want it bad enough. But I really like the idea if I could just print something out, you know, print it out or write it down on a piece of paper and just give it to you. I I think that would be amazing. If I could just give you, 10 safe coins, just write on a piece of paper, here's the password. All you have to do is go to this account. That way you don't have to sign up. Everything's done. That would be truly amazing. And I think it was suggested and talked about, but there's some technical things that we have to sort out. But imagine how easy it would be to say, okay, well, I have, 7 different cryptocurrencies. And you say, well, I have 0 wallets. How are you going to give it to me? Okay, well, I'm going to need you to sign up for Ripple. Then you got to sign up for Bitcoin. Then you got to sign up for Dash. Then you got to sign up for Dogecoin. And oh, don't forget Ethereum and sign up for SafeCoin. Or I could just write out something on a piece of paper, give it to you. And then at your time, at your leisure, whenever you feel like it, you can go on to the Safe Network and collect it.
Mm.
And so I thought that would be great because that way you can literally, I wanted to introduce the idea of like a credit card for the safe coin. So if I could give you a card, like, those prepaid cards,
Mm-hmm.
where they're called gift cards, where you can charge up the card and you just hand it to them. Here's a
Yeah.
$10 gift card. Imagine if we could just charge up a safe coin card and just give it to them. Problem
Yeah.
solved. Here's a gift, and Paige actually brought that up. She's like, we should, focus on how we can distribute SafeCoin more easily. And so that's where all that development came from. And I think if you really want SafeCoin to stand out as a currency, you need to have it do all these things that people would find useful. And I think one of the things that would be incredibly useful is to be able to give somebody something physical
Mhm.
because they understand what a card is
Mhm.
and they have an email. So however you do it, but if you can give them something physical where it does not require for them to sign up, log in, get an account,
Mhm.
and go through all these hoops, just give it to them and then at their leisure, that would be 10, 100 times more useful than saying, well, you're going to have to join my network.
Mhm.
And if you ever gone to a store, my uncle actually, he was joking, but he did this on purpose to point out something. He saw the Visa MasterCard logo on the store shop, on the door. And he walked in and he asked them, do you accept cash? And the clerk thought about it for a second and then she said, yes. He's like, oh, I was just checking because, it says we accept Visa MasterCard. Didn't say anything about whether you accept cash. And believe it or not, some of the machines now
Mhm.
only accept credit cards. It says card only.
Mhm.
And this kind of leads into uh, some news stories that I've been hearing recently about they're trying to ban cash, because it's hard to secure, it's hard to track, it's whatever reasons they want. And that's actually terrifying to me. I think that cash is like the last bastion of anonymity other than them tracking your face on the camera as you walk in the store,
Mhm.
because now they can not only see your transaction, but they can see all of your transactions and all of your spending habits. And some people say, well, I don't really care because I get bonus points and discounts from this store for the looking at it. And I said, yeah, if it's more useful to you, then go with it. But I think some people feel once they realize that not only is that store able to see your transactions, but that information can be leaked out to everybody. And now if you have like a stalker, they know where you shop and what you eat. And that information is very powerful. It can be weaponized. Is the
Mhm.
RT was saying, data can be weaponized. If they know where you frequent, they know your habits, they know how to spam you with certain ads. All of that is just people don't realize, how much control and how much knowledge is about us until someone comes along and they're like, they can tell you your monthly habits. If you're a woman, they can tell you all of these things. And you're just like, I've never even met you. How do you know this about me? And that's like, I hope the same network will actually start closing the doors of your information just being so widely open and broadcast to everybody.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was trying to say earlier. The point I was making earlier on, David. This is the point. I mean, we've almost got to a point where we are in generally, and I hear it all the time. I hear it in conversations everywhere. People going, "Oh, the future is about no privacy. It's all going to be. We're going to meld into this great big, mind where we're going to know everybody about everything, and then we're going to have to deal with how we're going to deal with that when we know we can understand." I'm like, no, 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 no. Privacy is something we've all had. That's what I'm saying. I don't care anybody talks about all these fluted ideas about, oh, well, knowing everybody's thoughts would be a great thing. I'm like, well, okay, then go and be like David Blaine and go and put yourself in a glass box in the middle of London. Because I tell you what, and you'll see the reaction. I mean, that's a perfect example. You see the reaction you're going to get. People are going to throw stuff at you. They're not going to leave you alone. Nobody wants to live in a glass box, man. We all, this is the thing. And I think it goes back to what I was trying to say earlier on. The people that talk about all the reasons why we shouldn't have privacy, again, they're just like the little guy in Wizard of Oz or the guy in Matrix. They're just part of that paradigm, part of that talk. And you don't have to even talk about it in film senses or in senses of films. It's just like the religious people did back 500 years ago and going, oh, no, that everything revolves on the earth and we're the most important. And no. Then logic came across and then facts came across and it's the same thing now. It's these people just spout this stuff out and they don't even know what they're talking about. And like you said, when it breaks down, as you said earlier on, Dave, I think it's a real theme of this conversation is, like you said, nature doesn't care. When it breaks down to it, all it's going to be important is what is something you've got in your hand value by the other person at the other end who's got something else, and that all it breaks down to. And
Yeah.
that's what I think is a great idea. I think something we can maybe we can explore if you want to. We can definitely raise it in the ants meeting for Saturday, because it's something I thought about, the idea of the cash idea, and I think we could link that with imagine what you were just saying then. So you get a card, and not automatically it's got Seiko on it, but then it's got maybe a short film, a couple of musician tracks, and a piece of artwork. I mean, then it has value in itself, because it's like, wow. And so maybe that's something we can explore. And we can explore that on Saturday. I mean, but I kind of. I'm fascinated as well. Again, I kind of some areas I really want to kind of sort of wrestle you on and talk to you about. You mentioned that you love playing, massive online game systems and stuff like this. And again, and that's just an area of your fascination. Do you think that's something that's again, I'll have to say how you think that's going to develop, and where we're actually going to sort of step into real virtual, really virtual worlds? That's one area I would like to hear your opinions on. And the other is, again, on the flip side as well, do you ever get to the point, I mean, or do you like to play one-to-one games like chess and backgammon? And if it's a two, what would you rather go with, chess or backgammon? Because I play both, and my frustration in my world right now is I don't find many people want to sit across the board and play chess with me, because not many people play it. So I like and I quite like backgammon, because it's the element of chance, and I quite like the idea of chess is all very, you can strategize, whereas backgammon's chance. So again, you mentioned about, like I say, you played massive online game systems. Do you like to get back to one-to-one games, or is that something that doesn't interest you at all? And if you do, what it is? And again, something else, again, I know it's a lot I'm kind of bombarding you with, but what do you think the future developments for online gaming are? Because this sort of taps into something I spoke to you beforehand. I mean, are these just the steps along the way to where we are just basically now just living in a computer simulation that's basically simulating a computer simulation?
Okay, that's gonna be a lot. I'll try and address them.
Go on, I'll just throw the questions out. You can answer.
Okay, I'll start with online gaming. Massive online gaming. I got involved with, my very, very first one was called a MUD, multi-user dungeon. It was in college, and he was my kind of like my friend, but also kind of like I don't know. He wasn't a roommate. He was just one of the guys that I met up with, and he's like, "Hey, you want to play this?" So I got involved with that, and the thing that hooked me immediately is the social interaction. Here I am in a fantasy world interacting with other people, and I found that. Hello, are you still there? Okay, the audio went out.
Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry, we had an audio cut there. Sorry, go on, carry on.
All right. So I like the social interaction, and then I was able to compete, in combat and actually have real reactions. So it was very different from playing a video game where you're challenging the computer, because you have the emotional reaction of real people on the other end. So that was a big deal, and you could see all they called flame wars, where they start cussing and doing all the things, that the normal computer program wouldn't do. And that to me was like very immersive. It was like real life in a fantasy setting. So then came along the graphic MUDs, or the EverQuest, and then World of Warcraft. That's the one I got heavily involved in. And again, the attraction is still the same. I like the fact that I got to relate to other people in a digital world, because it reminded me so much of what my high school days were, where we played role-playing games, the Dungeons and Dragons with dice. And honestly, I still prefer the role-playing games because of the personal interaction. I like seeing the expression of the players. If I'm the dungeon master and I reveal some secret that they didn't realize was going to happen, and their reaction is priceless. And there's no digital graphics that will compare to their reaction to see them in person. Of course, the thing is, you have to be in the same local area so you can all hang out together. But that's what made it so unique and universal and appealing. The online gaming allowed me to connect with so many other people in vast distances, in Germany and Ireland and Scotland. so many different places. And we do have, I really appreciated the voiceover, which is they call it TeamSpeak. And then the newest one is Mumble. It's where you can talk to each other over the internet while you're playing the games. And so my attraction to that has always been being able to interact with people. But at the same time, I like to do one-on-one games. I do appreciate chess because I love strategy. So chess has always been a big thing for me. I play chess against a computer whenever I'm bored or I just want to pass some time. So yeah, this is one of the things I do on the side. But I like all kinds of games, and the thing that really got me curious about economies is I started to realize in the massive online games, economies develop on their own, and there's always these developers that are trying to centrally plan or create the right amount of incentives to get the currency to have a stable price, just like they're doing today. In fact, it's almost like a little experiment that's going on if you think about it. You know, how can we centrally plan this game? What is one of those called? It was a space game. There's the World of Warcraft. I think it's called Eve Online.
Mhm.
So Eve Online is like, player driven. All the players just they set their own prices, they do their own resource, and they just manage everything. It's like they say, it's like the free market. They form alliances, they create enemies, and then they go to war. And I've been in several games that have very similar dynamics. There's always these two big titans that once they get really big, then they end up going to war, and then everything starts all over again. And I'm seeing like the parallel to the real world, not the game world, but the real world. It's like here we are again. There's these big titans rising up, and it doesn't really matter who it is, but it just has in history. If you look at it, if you're a student of history, it always seems to happen that way. There's these big titans that they get really strong, and then at some point they clash. You know, and I'm looking at this and I'm looking at how the economy works, and I find a lot of this fascinating because I like strategy, and I'm like, well, can I centrally plan this? Can I create the right incentives? And what I realize is that no matter what you do, no matter what incentives you do, there's always that one guy or that one group of people that's going to F it up for you. They're going to just find a loophole, find a glitch, find an exploit, and they're going to, totally mess it up. And but guess what? That happens in real life too. And right now, the guys that are in control, they're messing it up pretty bad, and people are losing confidence.
Mm.
So yeah, the online games have really taught me a lot because it taught me about how people what their drives are and how they react to things. And I'm trying to see if we can create the right balance of incentives to not control it, but just to help it get people to, you know, participate and be able to have SafeCoin be accessible, have SafeCoin be a store of value. I mean, the most we can hope for is the minimal amount that I expect. I don't have like this high hopes, for it to become the ultimate one world currency. In fact, I don't think anything ever will. There's just no such thing in the world. I mean, if that were true, then we'd still be ruled by the Sumerians, which are
Mhm.
actually older than the Egyptians.
Mhm.
But the fact is, in all of history, somebody rises to the top, they're a leader, they reign for a little while, and then they collapse, and then it just repeats. So I don't expect, you know, what's never happened in history to actually happen. I don't expect SafeCoin to become the ultimate currency. I hope it would reign for a little while, and great. That's all I hope for. The minimal amount, just the minimal expectation.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
under promise, over deliver. That's what I would just strive for, and that's why a lot of people are like, "Oh, we're gonna make a lot of money on SafeCoin." I'm like, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just trying to make it as useful as possible, and if it's as useful as possible, the reward is not the profit. The reward is the benefit to humanity because people will have a better alternative. They'll have a better currency. It transacts faster. It's more secure. You know, it's more accessible, more spendable, and holds a store of value because it's derived out of productivity. So a lot of things that a lot of information that I'm putting out there. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people are like scratching their heads over the things I say. It's like, what?
No, I think that's but in all of that, David, you kind of you didn't answer the one question I did, and maybe fair enough.
Oh, I was trying to get through all of them.
I did bombard you, but what's your? I mean, are you aware of the computer simulation theory, which
Oh
is
yeah, the
the Nick,
VR.
Nick Bostrom idea of that we're basically just living in a computer simulation, and I'm fascinated by because someone obviously your background and you're interested in online gaming. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, what's your thoughts on that whole theory?
I think that there is never going to be a VR substitute for real life. I think that it'll be a hybrid of both. So perhaps, this is kind of weird to think about, but perhaps when people go to sleep, they go into their virtual life.
Mm-hmm.
To put in the Matrix terminology, they jack in when they go to sleep. And during their sleep time, that's when they experience their virtual life. And then they wake up, they go to their waking life, their physical life. And I think that's a concept that I haven't heard before, but I think that it might end up turning to that point because we probably are going to spend most of our waking lives immersed in the real world. I mean, a lot of our inspiration comes from looking at nature. A lot of our interactivity comes from dealing with other people in real life situations. Yes, I've had a virtual life. In fact, I've had a virtual girlfriend. You know, it was a real person on the other side. But the point I was making is we were all interacting through a digital world, but it still did not feel the same. It did not feel as real as my real life, as actually physically touching a person in the real physical world, seeing their reactions, seeing the fact that they get sick, seeing their face change. There's just so much in the real world that we're not even close to emulating in the virtual world yet. Not yet. I mean, that may be 100 years from now, but right now I don't think we're going to be transitioning to a complete 100 virtual world. I think that would just be like a hobby. It'll be something that we spend on our free time doing. I don't think that the real world can really be replaced to that extent. Does
Okay,
that kind of answer your
no,
question?
no, because that's what I'm saying. Because I mean, the thing that's really, and that's why maybe when I'm the whole simulation theory that Nick Bostrom put up with, really, it's hard to shake in your head because you think, like you said, it's only a matter of time. And it's a matter of time where we perfect it and perfect it and perfect it, where that virtual reality does become real. Whether that's we merge with the machine by putting neurons and clipping ourselves into some sort of thing. But eventually, it's going to happen, and it's really hard if we as humans as we do, we're always going to want to get perfect and get better and better and better. Unless that suddenly stops, which is the whole point of that simulation theory. That's one of the arguments. We suddenly stop and say, no, that's it. We're not going to do any more. But knowing the trait that we are, then how do we know that we're not? That's the whole point of it. We're not just living in a simulation right now made by future generations. And that's when it starts to twist your melon a bit because you think, okay, then we're a computer simulation right now in building a computer simulation that we can, and it starts to like fractalize all over the place. But that's the whole point of that Nick Bostrom one. You think, okay, right now, like you say, maybe in our lifetimes we're never going to have that virtual thing, but eventually it's going to get there. And at what point do we not know that this isn't like the Matrix said that right now we're not living in some simulation?
You just you just reminded me of two different movies, actually three. The first one is called The 13th Floor, and
Mm-hmm.
that was where he created a virtual reality, and he was already in a virtual reality, but he didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is called Surrogate. I think it's called Surrogate. It's where they jack into the computer and they have a robot go and perform the physical daily activities that looks just like them. Yeah, I think it was played by Bruce Willis. Yeah, I think it's called Surrogate. I think we're probably going to get to that point where but I don't see that as a virtual reality. The third movie that I think that is really hitting home is Lawnmower Man. It's actually where we immerse our consciousness into the virtual world, and I don't know if that's even possible given our current technology. And I think if it were, it would be many, many years from now because we're not even close to AI, like an actual autonomous AI. The closest thing we've come to is the Siri. It's the bot that can talk back to you. You can ask it questions. So yeah, I'm always fascinated with all this new stuff that's coming out, and I can't see the future. I mean, I wish I could, but for now, it's for what I know, I don't see anything happening that soon. So not definitely not in my lifetime. I mean, if it does, well, that would be something.
Mm,
But I think if we do get to the point of Lawnmower Man, where we can immerse our consciousness into a virtual world, then yeah, I think that would be 100% replacement because we would shut off our human bodies and just like Lawnmower Man did. For those people that don't know, it's his body like kind of shriveled up and he just went into the computer and spread out everywhere. So I think we could probably in my lifetime we could get to the surrogate part where we can control robots in the fields. Like let's say I mean we're doing it with drones right now. There's these drones that fly and there's pilots sitting in some safe bunker, out there bombing other combatants and whatnot. And it's a whole documentary on that. It's pretty unfortunate, but yeah, we're at that point where human beings are controlling machines, for things. And I think that imagine if you're at home and you can just log in and you start controlling a robot that's on the field picking bananas or, you know, and so whatever the robot camera sees as the trees, that would translate to your VR camera, and you would use the motion of your gloves to cut the bananas and then put it in. You can do all that stuff. Farming, perhaps you want to drive a tractor. I think they have the technology that they're working on to do that.
hmm That's why I think it's fascinating, David. I mean, I love the analogy, and I keep going, repeating, coming back to it. But I think it's I think the best analogy I've ever heard. Taking the analogy that it's like this is a new baby and it's just having its open its eyes for the first time. I think it's fascinating to see how two different roughly you can split the world into two areas. You've got Eastern way of looking at things and our Western way. And Eastern generally, maybe because of the Shinto and maybe how they, that's just been a very an oral tradition for a long time, but the way that the people in the East generally view technology is completely different from the way that we do in the West. We're very much, you hear stories about it's all fear and it's always about drones, and the films we see are all about Terminator and it's all going to be a nightmare. Whereas the Eastern philosophy and the people that live over in China and all that part of the world, they all look at it and go, okay, this is just, I understand. This is just another form of intelligence that's just rising, and living amongst me. And it's going to be fascinating. And going to that analogy of the child, of which, how those two sides, the Eastern and the Western, how the child develops with those two thought patterns that basically are a lot older than me and you. These go back a long way. I mean, the Eastern philosophy goes back many thousands of years. So it's not going to disappear in the next generation. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two thought processes shape this, like you said, this baby that you so perfectly described, it just opened its eyes. It's going to be interesting to see how the two cultures, shape that new rising intelligence.
Well, I think we're heading to the stage where, like I said, I think there's a wave of unemployment for the human labor, but I think the paradigm shift is we're now going to transition towards we're going to become the masters and the owners of machines individually. So, to put an example, let's say you're at home and you say, "Oh, it's time to go to work." So you put on your VR camera and you put on your gloves and whatever, and you sign in, and your robot, like the iRobot, your robot goes out and follows your instructions and drives a bus. That's what he does. And you'll have the human decision making, the human interaction, and the human thought process, but it's just the robots following the instructions and doing all the manual things that the human can't do. Let's say the guy is is really old, and has a bad leg or can't drive, but he's able to do everything else that the send the information to the robot, and the robot can do all the physical stuff.
Hmm.
And that would be fascinating because I always thought, hey, if I could just have my robot work for, whoever, imagine, because the robot is a lot stronger, probably will be a lot faster. They need to work on the agility, fine detail of motor functions, but they're getting there. They're getting to that point. And I think instead of just trying to get the AI to do it, just have a human being serve that purpose in the interim until they discover how to get an AI to make good human decisions based on experience. I mean, it's it's almost impossible to build an experience into an AI, because an AI is very much like a baby unless you put a set of rules and that's all it does, and it'll follow the rules. And so one of the things I learned from the iRobot is, Will Smith was saying the computer, your damn trash can, he calculated the percentages and it saved me instead of the girl. He should have known better. He should have saved the girl. So that's a human decision based on experience. So I think since we cannot replace experience right away, let's just use people as operators. And I think there will be a lot more operators. So say the guy in a wheelchair, instead of, having him risk his life trying to get to work at Walmart in his wheelchair, just let him, you know, take over the robot as the greeter, and he'll be greeting people. In fact, he can help other people that are disabled and need help. And, this is some guy that's in a wheelchair at home. And so they would pay him for the robot, functioning. Of course, they say, well, that's impossible because of the costs, to build a robot that can do that could link up the network. But I don't know. I think it is possible if you look at the fact that people more and more are not going to be needed for the lower end stuff. In fact, they have already an assembly machine that they're thinking about for the fast food franchise to just take your order and put together your meal and cook everything and then deliver it out the window without any physical employee being there.
My friend, last night, David, I had a podcast last night, and I was talking to a dear friend of mine who lives down in Miami, and he mentioned the same thing. He's seen it. He's seen one of these
Yeah.
Burger Kings where, like, there's, and it's like, whoa, there's no human beings in this thing at all. It's just shoved out. There's your burger. It's like, man, we're on the point I'm trying to make. We're entering some very strange times, and it's only going to get stranger and stranger and stranger.
Yeah, and it's happening not because it's not because people are pushing for it. It's happening because why? It's easier.
Mm,
It's easier and it's more useful.
mm.
I mean, think about the gas attendants. I know there's a crowd out there that's like, we should bring back personal gas attendants because they used to wipe your windows, check your oil and fill up your gas tank. But how many gas stations have you seen recently that actually have a gas attendant that does that? In fact, the only gas attendant I've seen is just someone that shows up when you have a problem trying to get your credit card, or if the fuel pump goes out of commission. You know,
Hmm.
so I mean, this is just the reality. It's not me saying, "Oh, I think it should go this way." I'm just pointing out this is what's happening. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's not about what I like. It's just the reality of what's happening. And, companies realize it's just cheaper. It's cheaper to automate. In fact, Henry Ford was one of the very first that started automation. He realized, hey, instead of having custom made vehicles, let's just put all the same parts and build the same vehicle many times. And there you
Exactly,
go.
Dave.
And he
Exactly,
got
Dave.
the cost down, and people liked it because it was cheaper.
Exactly, David. It's one of another fine example I always use, and I'm sure people listening to me would get be sick of me saying it, but it's like the Gutenberg printing press. It was as a simple machine. You could go boom, boom, and out you go. And instead of some scribe sitting in a room under a candlelight learning some weird language, having to scribble it on some
And
manuscript.
copying it 100,000 times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm trying to say, these things are inevitable, and once they it's sometimes like the same thing. The printing press is just a small little thing, but the fundamental changes it has. are far beyond anything that maybe Gutenberg could have ever thought of. I'm sure that when he sat and worked out that if I can just do this and press something, he never even thought that would bring about civil war in Great Britain and the reformation of the church and the cat. He would have never comprehended. And it's the same thing we are now. We've got a simple bit of technology, and how it's going to fractalize into the future. Nobody. And when you hear, that's why I always say to people, if you hear anybody saying, oh, but in 10 years time the safe network's going to look like this, and I'm like, well, don't believe anything they're saying, because they haven't got a clue. Nobody, it's unbelievable, the fractalization of what we're about to enter into. So anybody can sort of say, oh, in 10 years time this is what it's going to look like. I say to them, they're fools, don't listen to them. We're about to enter, as I was saying, like we've been discussing this whole conversation, things are just bubbling all the time, and the world is just changing many, many different directions. And that's what I'm saying.
Some of the innovations will rise up and it'll fail, and then some of them will stay, and it'll stay as long as it remains useful until something better comes along. That's just the way it works. It's the horse was around for a long time, as a mode of transportation. Now it's just used for recreation. I'm talking about the physical animal. People, I don't see anybody going to the grocery store with their horse packing their bags. I haven't seen that, and I don't think I'll ever see that in the future. And perhaps one day we won't even have to go to the grocery stores anymore. In fact, maybe it'll just be direct delivery. In fact, I think that's a very likelihood to happen. And we discussed on another podcast, I think, with Dali about how to shop in a store and get those groceries just delivered directly. And you physically picked it out, from the camera. It's like, oh, I want that one and I want that one. And then you check out, and that stuff just goes straight to the delivery person, and then they deliver it. So I think that's very possible. I think it's probably likely to happen, probably in my lifetime, because there's deliveries happening right now, and people realize they can buy at discount. They buy at discount because it's coming straight from the farm, so to speak.
Exactly, and I just wanted to linger on that point, Dave, because I think it's one of the things you mentioned earlier on. And I think it's one of the great lessons that I've seen, particularly in my part of the world over here, and England is particularly is just littered with all these edifices and buildings where there's this great surge for modernity, and let's throw everything away, and we now have the solutions, and it's all concrete. Let's all make everything. And my point I'm trying to make is this idea that, well, I know you concur completely on. It's about adapting things, and like you say, yes, great. So we as much as we're talking right now, and we're talking about new technologies and stuff like this. And you're right, and we quite rightly, both of us give the example about how the car replaced the horse. But equally, on the beach, because go right back to this beach in Guam, man. You don't need like I said, a 10,000 rod. All you need is a log that you can hollow out, and that boat will be still as that canoe. It doesn't matter if it's made of
the other island.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if it's made of carbon fiber. I'm saying, and this is one of the things. Again, I'm always wary about this whole idea of like anything from the old world, let's discard it, and we're focused only on the new, and we're trying to reinvent everything. It's like no, some things are adaptable, and that's what I'm trying to say. It's a lesson you learn from nature. Like, you can adapt things, and don't chuck the bath. The old saying, don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater.
Yes, there's, like I said, there's going to be a lot of things that will rise up, and some things people find useful, and perhaps some things that they won't find so useful. And that's just the way it goes. If I knew the answers to those questions, what's going to be useful in 10 years or 5 years from now, then I'd probably be, one of those really wealthy people. But all I'm interested in right now is just personal. I want to make my life better. That's it. I have very small expectations. My expectations are not real big. I don't care to save the world. I think the world will do fine on its own. I'm just interested in just making my life better and living my life as best as I can. And if that means, making a better internet that would bring me a better experience, that's what I'm going after.
See, one of the things, David, and I think we're about to head up the 3 hours, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning here. So I think this is a great sort of time to end this podcast. But
Yeah.
one of the things I done and I was fascinated. I did a Google research on your surname and the meaning of it, because I mean I'm sure most surnames have a meaning, and I don't know. I'm sure you're more aware than anyone else what the meaning of your name is. But I think it's some when you just mentioned that about that, if you knew all those things, you'd be the man with all the power and the knowledge. But in some ways, your whole surname, and again, what the definition I saw was "man from the center of the mountains," and that immediately evoked. I saw you. I thought, yeah, this is exactly it. It's that whole the man from the center of the mountains. He knows it all, but he doesn't want to sit on the top. He doesn't want to sit in and you're almost living up to your name. And I think that. In some ways, you're. It's a very good. Even the whole point I'm trying to make is it's the example what you just said then about how if you did know it all, you'd be exactly what you are now, and that is the lesson. That's the point. I've very kind of, and that's why I mentioned about your surname, because I think it's almost intrinsically you're living up to your name, and I think it's a very wise. It kind of sums up this podcast. Really, your surname could be the title of this podcast, because the very meaning of what it means of being be from the center of the mountains, and
Yeah, another phrase that could be used is good foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Very base of the mountain, or good foundation. So yeah, I never thought about it that way, but maybe it was coded into my DNA. Maybe I was created for this purpose. Who knows?
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then which pill do you want, the blue or the red one?
I'm the 7th iteration.
Yeah, exactly, man. Well, look, man, it's been an absolute well, mate, as it has been an enlightening experience and conversation. Well, we'll probably meet on Saturday anyway, because there's a few things here that can be raised and we can discuss on the ants meeting. But David, it's been absolute. Thanks for giving me your time tonight, man. And I know how busy you are and stuff. And as you should know, you're always welcome on this. Anytime you want to come back on. But I want to, sort of wrap this podcast up, man. And I'm gonna hand it over to you. And I was going to say to it, what would be your parting message to anyone who's listening or watching right now? What would be your parting message?
My parting message would be, just enjoy life. I mean, you're going to have good experiences and bad experiences. And there's most of the time, you're not going to be able to control any of it. And the most you can do is just enjoy the good times that you have and try to survive the bad times. And that applies, in everything, in your relationships, in your business, and in your projects. And so all you can do is just do the best you can, and just do it one step at a time.
Perfect, man. Well, that's very Yakamaka, very, very zen of you, my friend. You know what I mean? He's perfectly signed out there. But man, again, just before we wrap this up, where can and I have to bring this up, man. I mean, I know I can find you on the SafeNet forum, but again, I mean, I can't find you on Twitter, my friend. So where can people reach out to you, my friend? I mean, give them places where if they want to reach out to you and contact you, where can they find you?
Primarily, I hang around the Safe Network forum. So if they get on the Safe Network forum, then they can probably find me by messaging me. But if they don't want to get on the Safe Network forum, then they can go to my Google. They can just look me up on, I think it's David Yamanaka on Google, the Google Plus.
Mm-hmm.
They can find me there and messaging me that way. But most of my time is spent on the Safe Network forum. So it's like the old saying goes: if you want to find me, you have to go where I'm at most of my time, where I hang out.
There you go, man. That forget what I just said. That's the real Zen moment, my man. If you want to find them, if you want to go to the thing, go and find him, my friend. Look, perfect, man. It's been an absolute pleasure tonight, and I'm going to wrap this up by saying, life is people.
All right, Tim. Take it easy.